Chapter 850. According to what you're saying, I was the one who started the trouble? Yu Qianqiu looked at the green bead, trapped by the purple flames with malicious intent. The azure-clothed man jumped in fright and waved his hand in panic. No. It must be that little bastard's brain that's running amok. I'll definitely take care of him after this. Yu Qianqiu snorted. What does it have to do with me whether you take care of him or not? What I want to ask is, there's no enmity between us, so why did you try to kill me? The azure-clothed man was speechless. How could he explain this clearly? Since you were sent here, I naturally had to kill you. After dawdling for a while, he smiled awkwardly. May I know your name and which sect in the celestial world you're from? I'm Wei Chuanxiu, and I have some acquaintances in the celestial world. Perhaps I know your sect's elders. Don't try to make connections, it's useless. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and interrupted. I'm a wandering cultivator without a sect, so I definitely have no relationship with you. Right now your inner core is in my hands. I only need a thought to completely destroy it. Tell me, how are you going to settle the debt of killing me? The azure-clothed man's eyes darted around, and he let out a sigh of relief. The meaning behind the other's words was very clear. There was a lot of room for negotiation, so the result wouldn't be too bad. He paused and probed. You didn't lose anything after all, but my cultivation was damaged. How about this? We'll let this matter go. You return my inner core to me, and we'll pretend nothing happened. We won't pursue this matter. What do you think? Yu Qianqiu immediately sneered. You're really dreaming. Do you really think I'm made of clay? You'll tell me after you're done playing with me. You must be joking. Damn it. I was brought here by a group of stinky bats, and almost lost my life. Who's going to pay for my mental damage? The azure-clothed man really didn't understand Yu Qianqiu. Now that he had the upper hand, he wouldn't let this matter go if he didn't get the most out of it. Even if he wanted to give up, he couldn't leave behind an enemy to cause trouble in the future. Compensation for mental damage? The azure-clothed man muttered to himself. He thought for a long time before weakly asking, If you want money, why don't you just tell me a number? Talking about money is too vulgar. Do you think I'm someone who needs money? Yu Qianqiu said disdainfully. The green-clothed man was stunned. Then what does this compensation for mental damage refer to? Yu Qianqiu stared at the green bead trapped in the purple flames in his hand, and said indifferently, Compensation for mental damage. I mean a price that will compensate me for my fright. The man in green scratched his head. He couldn't figure it out. He also felt a lingering fear from Qing Zhu's gaze on the inner core in his hand. The feeling just now was too painful and unbearable. It was the first time in his life that he had suffered like this. He didn't know what treasure was flashing with purple light in Qing Zhu's hand. It had such great power that it could easily damage his inner core. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore and said bluntly, What do you want as compensation? Just say it. Don't beat around the bush. It depends on how much you can pay, and whether you have the ability to pay the compensation I want. If the compensation you give is only enough to send a beggar away, then I'd rather destroy this inner core to vent the hatred in my heart. Yu Qianqiu said disapprovingly. You're questioning my Wei Chuanqiu's ability? The azure-clothed man was startled. He pointed at his nose and said in surprise, Have you never heard of me, Wei Chuanqiu, in the immortal realm? Or do you not want to settle this matter? Wei Chuanqiu, Yu Qianqiu said suspiciously. I really haven't heard of you. Are you very famous in the immortal realm? So you haven't heard of me. No wonder you're so daring. It seems that I've been cultivating in seclusion for too long. The juniors in the immortal realm haven't even heard of my name. Wei Chuanqiu's small eyes faintly revealed a trace of nostalgia. He sighed. I've been cultivating in seclusion in this jade palace for too long. I'm afraid it's been more than 10,000 years. Back then, although I wasn't a top expert in the immortal realm, I was still a famous figure. Famous? Yu Qianqiu looked up and down at Wei Chuanqiu, who had a pointy mouth, monkey cheeks, and shifty-eyed eyes. He doubted that this person, who was easily controlled by him, could be famous in the immortal realm. Wei Chuanqiu's small eyes flickered as he looked at him. He swung his big sleeves behind his back. He stood up straight and said proudly, Although I, Wei Chuanqiu, am not a top expert in the immortal realm, I'm still an early-stage immortal emperor. Back then, who in the immortal realm didn't know me, the green-winged bat king Wei Chuanxiu? Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. Green-winged bat king Wei Chuanxiu? He suddenly thought of the Ming cult's 4 great guardian kings. Now he was a little suspicious that this guy was also a transmigrator. Wei Chuanxiu's eyes lit up. He said excitedly, "How is it? Have you heard of me?" Yu Qianqiu frowned and whispered, "Isn't the green-winged bat king called Wei Yixiao? How did it become Wei Chuanxiu? Who's Wei Yixiao?" Wei Chuanxiu's face gradually became angry. Could it be that someone is pretending to be me, the green-winged bat king? Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses. He knew that it was purely a coincidence. He shook his head. "No, I just said it casually. I couldn't tell that you're an early-stage immortal emperor." "Good, very good." He stared at Wei Chuanxiu with shining eyes. "Now I believe that you have the ability to compensate for my mental damage." "It's good that you believe me." Wei Chuanxiu nodded in satisfaction. "Return the inner core to me. As long as it's within my capabilities, I will agree to it. I won't go back on my words." He thought that his name was worth something. But who would have thought that Yu Qianqiu wouldn't buy it? He raised his eyebrows and stared at the Niden in his hand. "If you take it back, and then come back to kill me, then I won't have anything to rely on. That's too unfair for me. I have a good idea. Not only can you get your inner core back, but I can also get the compensation I want for my mental loss." "What idea? Tell me." Wei Chuanqiu's eyebrows twitched. He had a feeling that the other party's idea wouldn't be a good one. "I'm just saying. I don't need you to agree. Don't be rash. If I get nervous and destroy your inner core, then I'm sorry." Yu Qianqiu first gave him a warning, so that he would be mentally prepared. He then plucked up his courage and said, "Actually, it's not a big deal. I just want to borrow 100 years of your time as compensation." "Borrow 100 years? Wei Chuanqiu's eyes flickered. "What do you mean? Explain it clearly." Cough cough. Yu Qianqiu coughed twice and curled his lips. "Very simple. You serve me for 100 years. After 100 years, I will return your inner core to you." Wei Chuanqiu's eyes widened and he raged. "T. You want to enslave me for 100 years? He seemed to be willing to fight. "Don't be rash," Yu Qianqiu shouted. He raised the inner core that was surrounded by purple flames and said, "I'm warning you. If I accidentally destroy it, don't regret it." "You!" Wei Chuanqiu stomped his feet in anger and said, "Brat, you're courting death. You dare threaten me. Damn it. There's no such thing as a free lunch in this world." Yu Qianqiu's temper flared. The purple light in his hand shone brightly, and he raised his eyebrows. "I'm threatening you. What can you do to me?" Wei Chuanqiu was so angry that he started yelling. He pointed his finger and shouted, "If worst comes to worst, I'll lose a lot of my cultivation today. I don't want to be bullied by you. F***CKU. You attacked first. You think you're in the right? I don't want to be bullied by you." Yu Qianqiu's mouth was fast, but his hands were even faster. He immediately attacked. The purple light in his hand immediately wrapped around the shining green inner core and started to twist. "Ah!" Wei Chuanqiu held his head and screamed. With a wong sound, the green mist exploded. A huge and ferocious-looking green-winged bat immediately flew around the palace. As if its butt was on fire, it screamed and begged for mercy. "Stop, stop. We can talk about it, we can talk about it. Bastard. You refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit." Yu Qianqiu angrily controlled the power of the purple flames. With a pa-ta sound, the huge green bat directly fell to the ground. At this time, Zhang Shihe's bloody mouth continuously cried out, "I'm dying of discomfort. I, your father, have had 8 lifetimes of bad luck. Why did I have to go into seclusion to cultivate this 10,000 demons heart sutra? If I didn't form this broken Dan, how could I have suffered like this?" With a buzz sound, the green mist exploded. Wei Chuanqiu, who was crawling on the ground, staggered to his feet. Not only did his face become even paler, he was swaying back and forth on the spot. He seemed to be unable to even stand steadily, as if he was drunk. It could be seen that the damage to his inner core had a great impact on him. However, while he was swaying, he didn't forget to wave at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Kid, don't mess around anymore. We can talk about it. If you do it again, my cultivation will fall below the early immortal emperor stage. If that really happens, even if I'm beaten back to my original form, I'll still kill you. Yu Qianqiu coldly snorted and said, I'm much more polite than you are. If you don't act recklessly, I naturally won't act recklessly. The purple light in his hand disappeared along with the shining cyan inner core in his hand. Wei Chuanqiu suddenly realized that he had lost contact with the inner core. He suddenly looked around and said anxiously, My inner core, where did you take it? Give it back to me. Don't worry. I've kept it in a very safe place. Other than me, no one else can find it. Yu Qianqiu said disapprovingly. Actually, he didn't dare to keep the inner core in his hand. His opponent's cultivation was too high for him. It was very possible that his opponent would accidentally take it away. Wei Chuanqiu looked at his body and heaved a sigh of relief. If his inner core was destroyed, not only would his cultivation fall, he would also be beaten back to his original form. Now that he was still standing here, it meant that the inner core was indeed safe and sound. However, the strange thing was that he couldn't sense the location of the inner core at such a close distance. Logically speaking, it was impossible. This was really strange. Chapter 851. Just as he was feeling puzzled, he caught sight of Yu Qianqiu's empty hands. He was stunned, and a ferocious glint flashed in his eyes. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes. He knew that he was in trouble, but he endured it and didn't flee. As expected, Wei Chuanqiu had already disappeared from the spot. His neck tightened, and his entire body immediately became immobile. Wei Chuanqiu's sinister laughter rang in his ears. Little brat, you're still too inexperienced to fight with me. Where's the inner core? Hand it over obediently. Old bastard. Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart. His neck was tightly gripped by Wei Chuanqiu, and his throat was gurgling, but he couldn't say a word. But even so, he still didn't flash back to Utopia. Wei Chuanqiu couldn't be bothered to waste time with him. He directly pulled the storage bag off his waist and checked it with one hand. He was stunned to find that it was empty. There wasn't even a strand of hair. He immediately threw it behind him and shook Yu Qianqiu's neck, scolding. What's wrong with you? You don't have anything, and yet you're still hanging a lousy bag on your waist? As he spoke, his hands didn't stop moving. His sharp claws danced in the air, and with a hissing sound, the rags flew around the palace. In the blink of an eye, all of Yu Qianqiu's clothes were torn to pieces. However, he didn't find what he was looking for. Wei Chuanqiu grabbed Yu Qianqiu's neck like he was holding a duck that had its feathers removed. He shook his neck crazily and shouted, Where is it? Where did you hide my inner core? Hand it over. Bastard. Are you a pig? How am I supposed to speak when you're grabbing my neck? Yu Qianqiu felt that his neck was about to break, and his eyes were blurry from the shaking. He kept rolling his eyes, but the other party was so anxious that he didn't notice anything. There was no need to doubt that this fellow was a ruthless person. Even if he was stripped naked and suffered such humiliation, he still clenched his teeth and endured it without dodging. Otherwise, with just a thought, he could safely escape the clutches of the demon and return to Utopia. But he just didn't want to. Wei Chuanqiu's expression froze as he recovered from his impatience. He also realized his mistake. He immediately released his 5 claws and clasped onto Yu Qianqiu's shoulder. Fortunately, Yu Qianqiu was not an ordinary person. Otherwise, he would have been dead. The red-faced Yu Qianqiu coughed twice and took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. Even though he couldn't move, he still gritted his teeth and said, Wei Chuanqiu, you old bastard, you're obviously taking revenge on me. Fine, you win, but listen carefully. Since I dared to do this, I'm not afraid of you. I've already teleported the item away. If anything happens to me, someone will immediately destroy your inner core. None of us will have an easy time. Even if I die, it'll be worth it if I can drag an immortal emperor expert down with me. Teleported away. Wei Chuanqiu was stunned. He thought for a long time, but couldn't figure out what that meant. Then he flew into a rage and said, Stop fooling me. Without saying anything, he punched Yu Qianqiu's abs. As Yu Qianqiu's body flew up, he spat out a mouthful of blood. However, he couldn't fly away. Wei Chuanqiu's 5 claws dug into his shoulder and dragged him back. In an instant, blood flowed from Yu Qianqiu's shoulder, and the pain penetrated deep into his bones. "Old bastard! If you dare to attack again, don't blame me for being impolite. I'll immediately make your cultivation fall below the early immortal emperor stage." Yu Qianqiu roared with blood in his mouth. Pung! Wei Chuanqiu grabbed his shoulder and gave another heavy punch. Yu Qianqiu's body flew up, and he spat out another mouthful of blood. His 5 claws dug deep into his shoulder and dragged him back again. Wei Chuanqiu sneered. "Stubborn dead duck. Do you really think this Bat King is a pushover? This is just an appetizer. If you don't hand it over obediently, I'll let you have a taste of this Bat King's soul-searching technique. Then, you'll know what it means to live a life worse than death. I'll ask you again, are you going to hand it over or not?" When Yu Qianqiu heard this, he opened his bloody mouth and sneered. He finally understood that he had miscalculated and suffered a great loss this time. His plan had been for nothing, and he had bled for nothing. Not everyone was so easy to scare. To deal with this old fox, one had to use a direct and effective method. If you're polite, the other party won't be polite. "Old bastard! You asked for it, don't blame me." Yu Qianqiu's eyes were filled with hatred. "Little bastard, you still dare to be stubborn. You really won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Then, I'll let you have a taste of soul-searching." Wei Chuanqiu's words stopped abruptly. His evil smile froze on his face. His 2 small eyes widened, as if he had seen something unbelievable. The 5 claws that dug into Yu Qianqiu's shoulder were covered in blood. However, Yu Qianqiu himself had disappeared without a trace under his eyes. "It's over." Wei Chuanqiu instantly panicked. He didn't even dream that Yu Qianqiu would do this. His inner Dan was still in the other party's hands. The anxious Wei Chuanqiu flashed a series of afterimages in the palace. He searched every corner of the Jade Palace in hopes of finding Yu Qianqiu. However, after searching the entire palace, he couldn't find a trace of Yu Qianqiu. Wei Chuanqiu didn't stop. In a flash, he turned into a ray of light and shot towards the tunnel outside the palace. He firmly believed that Yu Qianqiu must have used some sort of camouflage technique. With his cultivation, he wouldn't be able to escape far. There was definitely a chance to catch him. However, when the ray of light flashed halfway through the tunnel, it immediately stopped. Wei Chuanqiu stood in the tunnel and suddenly turned around. He stared in the direction of the Jade Palace. He suddenly sensed his inner Dan again. It was in the Jade Palace. Without thinking further, he turned into a ray of light and quickly returned. In the end, what he was worried about still happened, inside the Grand Jade Palace. Between 2 pools of blood and tattered clothes, Yu Qianqiu stood there with a cold smile. The blood on his face and mouth was still there. However, he had put on his clothes again. That damned purple light appeared in his palm again. The scariest thing was that the purple light was still trapping his shining green inner Dan. It was truly a matter of life and death. Wei Chuanqiu's mind was in a daze. He knew that he was in big trouble. He had just offended the other party. The other party was obviously here for revenge. He immediately waved his hands and begged, "Please don't do anything rash. Please don't do anything rash. Everything can be discussed." "Discuss my ass." Yu Qianqiu's angry roar echoed throughout the Jade Palace. He cursed, "Old bastard. Now you know fear? Just now, I showed my sincerity to discuss with you, but you tried to kill me. If I fall for your tricks again, I'll write the 3 words Yu Qianqiu upside down. Now I'll let you have your fill." "Don't." Wei Chuanqiu shouted anxiously. "There's no need to discuss. Whatever you say, I'll agree to it." Yu Qianqiu, who was about to kill him, was startled. He could still consider agreeing to anything. He squinted his eyes and said, "No matter what I say, you'll really agree to it?" Wei Chuanqiu looked at the purple light in Yu Qianqiu's palm. He nodded and said, "You're Yu Qianqiu, right? As long as it's not too excessive, I'll agree to it." "You bastard! You actually lowered your standards again. Are your words bullshit? Yu Qianqiu roared. "I want to beat you up now to vent my anger. Do you agree?" The purple light in his hand suddenly increased. Wei Chuanqiu was so frightened that he said, "Yes, I agree." "Bastard." Yu Qianqiu put away the purple fire and inner core. He rolled up his sleeves and strode forward. He pointed at the frightened Wei Chuanqiu and shouted, "You're not allowed to dodge. You're not allowed to use your cultivation to resist. Otherwise, I'll make you wish you were dead. While Wei Chuanxiu was dumbfounded, Yu Qianqiu took a few steps forward. His two fists were covered with a thick golden armor, and it was the kind of golden armor that was covered with teeth nails. With a hoo sound, he swung his fist that was as big as a casserole. A bang sound was followed by a ah scream, and Wei Chuanqiu's small body fell to the ground. If one didn't rely on their cultivation to resist, it would be very difficult. Bastard, you dare to hit me. Yu Qianqiu kept on cursing. He hugged Wei Chuanxiu and gave him a beating. He punched and kicked Wei Chuanxiu, until Wei Chuanxiu was like a pig being slaughtered. Yu Qianqiu wouldn't be able to vent his anger if he didn't beat him to his heart's content. He remembered that he was stripped naked by this old man before. He pounced on Wei Chuanxiu and tore at him. In the blink of an eye, he stripped Wei Chuanxiu naked. Wei Chuanxiu was worthy of being an old monster. His skin was really thick. Yu Qianqiu's golden armor nails were flattened, but this guy didn't even have a scratch on his body. Yu Qianqiu was even more furious. He withdrew the golden armor on his fists. He casually took out a large piece of nether iron. His palms shone with purple light, and in the blink of an eye, he made a simple mace that was nearly 2 meters long. The most eye-catching thing was the sharp fangs on the mace. The skinny and naked Wei Chuanxiu lay on the ground. He covered his private parts with both hands and said in fear, "Yu Qianqiu, what are you trying to do? What do you think I'm doing? I haven't had my fill yet." Before he finished speaking, Yu Qianqiu swung the crudely made mace and smashed it on Wei Chuanxiu's head. The strength of the mace was not small. It smashed on Wei Chuanxiu's head. Wei Chuanxiu, who didn't dare to use his cultivation to resist, was immediately swung by a huge force and slid more than 10 meters on the smooth jade ground. Yu Qianqiu carried the mace and rushed over while shouting. In addition to the bloodstains on his face, his aura was unusually fierce. Wei Chuanqiu's heart trembled in fear. He hugged his head with both arms and bent over. His legs shrunk, and his whole body curled into a ball. Yu Qianqiu didn't care how pitiful his small body looked. He rushed over and raised the nether iron mace that looked even bigger than Wei Chuanxiu's small body. With a series of pung-pung sounds, he smashed Wei Chuanxiu with his fists and legs. The Jade Palace immediately echoed with Wei Chuanxiu's miserable cries. They lingered for a long time. Chapter 852. At his level of cultivation, his body was already extraordinary. Even if he didn't use his cultivation to resist, ordinary things wouldn't be able to hurt him. But if he didn't use his cultivation to resist, he would still feel the pain. After all, he wasn't a dead person. What's more, Yu Qianqiu was also a cultivator, so he didn't hold back when he beat him. Plus, the dark steel mace was quite sturdy, so Wei Chuanqiu's fate could be imagined. After a long time, the wailing and howling in the Jade Palace stopped. Wei Chuanqiu, whose hair was as messy as weeds, was naked in a corner of the Jade Palace. He covered his private parts with his hands, and weakly raised his bruised and swollen head to peek. The dark steel mace was already deformed. Yu Qianqiu held it and panted slightly. He had finally vented the anger in his heart. He hadn't felt so good in a long time. He felt a lot more relaxed. He twisted his neck, stared at Wei Chuanqiu and said in an unquestionable tone, "Serve me for 100 years. After 100 years, I'll return the inner core to you. Of course, if you perform well, I might return it after a decade or two. What do you think?" Wei Chuanqiu curled up in a corner and said with infinite resentment, "Do I have a choice?" "No." Yu Qianqiu immediately rejected the idea. Then, he swung the deformed mace in his hand, and it flew to the other side of the palace with a clanking sound. He clapped his hands and said, "You hit me before, and I hit you now. Our previous grievances are written off. In the next 100 years, we'll get along well and work together." Wei Chuanqiu's mouth twitched. He wanted to curse, but he held it in. Then he closed his mouth, and a cloud of green mist exploded from his body. When the mist dissipated, he changed into a new set of clothes, and the bruises on his face disappeared. After getting up, he looked around and found that the jade floor of the Jade Palace was a mess. There were potholes everywhere, and all kinds of jade sculptures had fallen. It was really unsightly. Bat King Wei, you really know how to find a place. You actually opened up such a luxurious place to cultivate. Yu Qianqiu looked around and praised. He seemed to have written off all the grievances from before, as if the destruction of this place had nothing to do with him. Wei Chuanqiu's face was originally filled with resentment, but his expression changed when he heard this. He slowly shook his head and sighed. I didn't create this place. I discovered it by accident. This place is the cultivation place of the peerless master, Tai Shuzheng. It's a pity that we've ruined it. It's really disrespectful. Peerless expert Tai Shuzheng? Yu Qianqiu was startled. He racked his brains for a moment, but he didn't seem to have heard of such a person before. He couldn't help asking suspiciously, a person who can be called a peerless expert shouldn't be a nameless person. How come I've never heard of such a person? That's because you're ignorant. Wei Chuanqiu was halfway through his words when he immediately remembered that Tai Shu was pinching his sore spot. He couldn't afford to offend this guy now, so he immediately changed his words. It's normal that you haven't heard of him. This person became famous earlier than immortal Emperor Jin Tai. When he shocked the three realms, immortal Emperor Jin Tai was still nowhere to be found. I guess there aren't many people in the younger generation who know of Tai Shuzheng. Became famous earlier than immortal Emperor Jin Tai? Yu Qianqiu was slightly shocked. He looked around the huge jade palace, and after careful observation, he found that there was a faint sense of vicissitudes. He asked in disbelief, why have I never heard of such a person? Could it be that he has already gone to the legendary god realm? No. Wei Chuanqiu shook his head and sighed with admiration on his face. It said that with his cultivation, he was qualified to ascend to the god realm. However, he was killed by someone. Yu Qianqiu was stunned when he heard this. He was stunned and said, his cultivation was high enough to ascend to the god realm, but he was killed by someone. Oh my god. Who would have such an ability? Could it be that someone from the god realm did it? Wei Chuanqiu shook his head again and turned to walk up to the 9-tiered high platform. After he got on the high platform, he bent down and touched the thick and simple jade couch. He said slowly, that is a story that has been sealed for countless years. I'm not sure what exactly happened. A long time ago, there was a peerless expert among the demon cultivators who shocked the three realms. He was called the ancestor of all demons by the demon cultivators. This person was Tai Shuzheng. Rumor has it that just as Tai Shuzheng was about to ascend to the god realm, another peerless genius appeared in the diabolism. It was this peerless genius that destroyed Tai Shuzheng's hope of ascending to the god realm. The demon god, Yu Qianqiu exclaimed when he heard this. He subconsciously thought of the demon god. Who else could be called the peerless genius of the diabolism other than the demon god? Yu Qianqiu cried out. Could it be that the demon god killed the ancestor of all demons, Tai Shuzheng? Wei Chuanqiu touched the jade couch and nodded. That's right, it was the demon god. Then he turned around and slowly sat on the couch. He stared at Yu Qianqiu and said, in fact, the demon god wasn't called the demon god before he fought with Tai Shuzheng. It was because he defeated Tai Shuzheng that he gained the right to ascend to the god realm. Later on, people called him the demon god. Before that, the demon god's name in the three realms was Yi. Yi. The demon god's name was Yi. What a strange name. Yu Qianqiu touched his chin and pondered for a while. He asked suspiciously, since Tai Shuzheng's cultivation level was high enough to ascend to the god realm, and the demon god was able to defeat Tai Shuzheng, it meant that he also had the ability to ascend to the god realm. But why did you say that he defeated Tai Shuzheng to gain the right to ascend to the god realm and become the demon god? This, Wei Chuanqiu twirled his mustache and said in a low voice, this happened too long ago, so there's no way to verify it. However, there are two legends that point out that the demon god defeated Tai Shuzheng to gain the right to ascend to the god realm. Seeing that Zhang Xian had stopped, Yu Qianqiu anxiously scratched his ear and urged, hurry up and finish your story. Which two legends? Tell me so that I can broaden my horizons. In fact, he was very interested in the demon god. One should know that Yin Juexing, whose life or death was unknown, had always been a shadow in his heart. The terrifying demon god was Yin Juexing's backer, so he was eager to know everything about the demon god. Wasn't there a saying, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will emerge victorious? That was what Yu Qianqiu thought. It was better to be prepared than to know nothing. Many people know about the first theory, but I heard about the second theory from an old senior. I'm afraid there aren't many people who know about it. Wei Chuanxiu twirled his mustache and said slowly, "It's said that ascending to the God realm doesn't just depend on one's cultivation. Of course, if one's cultivation doesn't reach a certain level, it's even more impossible to ascend to the God realm. It's said that the God realm doesn't confer gods easily. Every time the God realm descends, the number of people who can ascend to the God realm is limited." Yu Qianqiu was speechless and said, "You must be joking. There's a limit to the number of people who can ascend to the God realm? Are you saying that there was only one person who could ascend to the God realm? So the demon god and Tai Shuzheng fought?" "That's roughly what it means." Wei Chuanxiu nodded and said, "The first theory is that there was only one person who could ascend to the God realm. As you said, Tai Shuzheng, and ye fought over this person. In the end, Tai Shuzheng was defeated and died. The second theory is that there were actually two people who could ascend to the God realm." "Two people? Then why did they fight?" Yu Qianqiu was shocked and suddenly thought of Bai Changqun. It seemed that the demon god was also a belligerent. Maybe the demon god was also like Bai Changqun, who had nothing better to do and challenged experts everywhere. In the end he killed Tai Shuzheng. Wei Chuanqiu shook his head and said with a smile, "This legend is more interesting, but I don't think it's very credible. It's said that there were indeed two people who could ascend to the God realm. However, other than Tai Shuzheng and Yi, there was also a peerless expert called Ming. The three of them were called Zheng, Yi, and Ming. Three peerless experts appeared at once, so naturally, two people were not enough. The reason why this legend is interesting is because of the person called Ming. It's said that Ming was a woman, and both Zheng and Yi fell in love with this woman. The three of them were actually friends. The ancestor of all demons, and the demon god fell in love with a woman called Ming at the same time." Yu Qianqiu murmured and raised his eyebrows. Could it be that because Zheng and Yi fell in love with Ming, the two men gave one of the two people who could ascend to the God realm to Ming? In the end there was only one person left, so the two men fought for that person, and in the end, Zheng was killed by Yi? That's right. The second theory is the same as what you guessed. That's the general meaning. Wei Chuanqiu laughed wretchedly. That's a little too melodramatic. Yu Qianqiu said. He felt that it was somewhat impossible. In his impression, such experts should be like Bai Changqun, who abandoned everything to pursue the peak of cultivation. It seemed that they should not be restrained by love. After a short moment of silence in the Jade Palace, Yu Qianqiu suddenly exclaimed. He raised his eyebrows and seemed to have thought of something. After a while he looked around and asked, Bat Kingwei, did you just say that this is the cultivation place of the ancestor of all demons, Tai Shuzheng? Wei Chuanqiu was stunned. That's right. That's what I said. This is indeed the cultivation place of the ancestor of all demons, Tai Shuzheng. Is there a problem? Yu Qianqiu rubbed his chin and said with a smile. Although this palace is luxurious, it's unusually simple. How did you know that this is the cultivation place of Tai Shuzheng? Could it be that you found some evidence here? Why don't you take it out and let me have a look? Wei Chuanqiu's expression changed slightly, but it quickly turned into disdain. Don't you know what experience is? With my experience, it's not difficult for me to determine the origin of this jade palace. Yu Qianqiu nodded and gave a long, oh. He still had a smile on his face as he asked. I seem to have heard someone say something about the 10,000 Demons Heart Sutra, because of the pain. I wonder if this 10,000 Demons Heart Sutra is related to the original owner of this place, the ancestor of all demons. What do you think, Bat Kingwei? Chapter 853. Wei Chuanqiu's expression did not change, as he revealed a look of disdain. He said disdainfully, You really dare to think. If the 10,000 Fiend Heart Sutra that I cultivated was related to the 10,000 Fiend ancestor, would I have ended up like this? Although Wei Chuanqiu's words made sense, how could Yu Qianqiu be so easily fooled? He had clearly heard Wei Chuanqiu pounding the ground and howling that he shouldn't have gone into closed-door cultivation to cultivate the 10,000 Demons Heart Sutra. This meant that Wei Chuanxiu had not cultivated the 10,000 Demons Heart Sutra before going into closed-door cultivation. Moreover, how could cultivating the Myriad Demon Heart Sutra in the Myriad Demon Ancestors' place be a coincidence? Hehe. Bat Kingwei's words make sense. Yu Qianqiu nodded solemnly inside. With your fame in the immortal world, I'm sure your Myriad Fiend Heart Sutra has intimidated many people. If there's a chance, I'll have to ask about it so that I can admire the former glory of the Myriad Fiend Heart Sutra. Hearing this, Wei Chuanxiu could no longer pretend, and his expression changed greatly. Others may not know, but he knew very well that the Myriad Demon Heart Sutra was indeed a treasure left behind by Tai Shuzheng, and he obtained it by chance. That was why he had been in seclusion for 10,000 years. It was only because the Myriad Demon's Heart Sutra was suitable for demons to cultivate, and he himself was a descendant of primordial beasts. Now, he was even ranked among the ranks of immortal beasts. Although he was closely related to demons, there was still a huge difference between him and demons. After 10,000 years, he finally found a way to achieve the same goal through different means, and began to condense a Yao Dan. He saw that the day he would be able to cultivate the Myriad Demon Heart Sutra was not far away. Who would have thought that he would run into Yu Qianqiu, the jinx, at this time? Yu Qianqiu actually snatched away the inner core that he had painstakingly refined. The meaning of Yu Qianqiu's words was very clear. He was clearly threatening him. Once the secret that he possessed the Myriad Demon Heart Sutra was revealed, most people might not know what the Myriad Demon Heart Sutra was. But some of the old fellows in the immortal world would definitely have heard of it, especially Immortal Emperor Jin Tai. One must know that the cultivation method of the ancestor of all demons, Tai Shuzheng, was definitely a peerless cultivation method. Based on Immortal Emperor Jin Tai's character, he would definitely not tolerate the appearance of someone who challenged his authority. Once the secret of the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra was leaked, Immortal Emperor Jin Tai would definitely not let him off. At that time, it would be the day of his death. At this moment, Wei Chuanxiu's pupils constricted, and a strong killing intent brewed in his heart. However, on second thought, his inner core was controlled by Yu Qianqiu. He had tried before, and even if he killed Yu Qianqiu, he would not be able to find his inner core. The consequences of losing his inner core were very serious. If it was really as Yu Qianqiu had said, if something happened to him, someone would immediately destroy his inner core. Then, he would completely degenerate into a ferocious beast with no intelligence. He could not afford to take this risk. Yu Qianqiu, what do you want? Wei Chuanqiu stood solemnly, and with a gloomy expression he gritted his teeth and said, I have agreed to serve you for 100 years. It is already very difficult. Don't be greedy and go too far. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled. He slowly walked towards the high platform and sat on the jade couch. He touched the jade couch under his buttocks and said, Looks like I guessed correctly. The 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra is indeed related to the ancestor of all demons, Tai Shuzheng. Wei Chuanqiu tilted his head and looked at him, his small eyes flashing with a gloomy light. So what? Do you want the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra? That is impossible. Let me tell you. I can give up anything, but the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra belongs to me alone. This sutra contains my lifelong dream. Even if I die, I will not give it to anyone else. You better give up on this idea. Besides, even if I give you the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra, it is useless to you. Humans cannot cultivate the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra. When Yu Qianqiu heard this, he fell into silence. It was just as Wei Chuanqiu said. He indeed wanted the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra. The cultivation technique of an expert who had the qualifications to become a god was extremely attractive to him. However, Wei Chuanqiu's attitude was so resolute, as if he was prepared to die rather than submit. Using threats would definitely not work. Moreover, if it was really as Wei Chuanqiu said, that he was unable to cultivate the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra, even if he put in all his effort to obtain it, the price would not be small. It was very likely that he would lose the assistant Wei Chuanqiu that he desperately needed at this moment. Bat Kingwei, you are thinking too much. Yu Qianqiu slowly said. The reason why I am concerned about the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra is not because I want to obtain your 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra. You can rest assured about this. I just want you to do me a favor. Wei Chuanqiu asked suspiciously, what favor? Yu Qianqiu's eyes instantly lit up. He said in a cadence, if there is a chance, I will introduce a disciple to you. Please teach her the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra. As for the speed of teaching, I will leave it to you. I will definitely not force you. However, you must promise me one thing. Before the 100 years are up, you must at least let her have the ability to protect herself when she encounters an expert below the Immortal Emperor stage. This is my only request, and it is also a request that you must promise me. Otherwise, I don't care if you want to live or die. I guarantee that you will not live past today. Bat King Wei, can you promise me this? This? Wei Chuanqiu hesitated with some difficulty. It was difficult for him to make a decision. Seeing his hesitation, Yu Qianqiu's eyes flashed as he continued. Although I don't know why you have not made much progress after cultivating the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra for 10,000 years, I believe that Tai Shu Zheng's 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra is definitely not simple. It should not be difficult to create an ordinary expert. I'm afraid that you have encountered some insurmountable difficulties. Don't worry, if you encounter any external difficulties during the teaching process, you can tell me. Leave everything to me. If I can solve it, I will do my best. If I can't, I will think of a way to solve it. You only need to sincerely teach her the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra. Leave all the troubles to me. Wei Chuanqiu twirled his huge sleeves, twirled his mustache, looked at Yu Qianqiu from head to toe, and said, there are indeed some headache-inducing troubles in the process of cultivating the 1000 Demon Heart Sutra. With your cultivation base, are you sure you can solve them? Sitting cross-legged on the jade couch, Yu Qianqiu said coolly, I believe the speed of teaching and the speed of solving problems are directly proportional. If it is because I am unable to solve the problems brought about by the external objects that affect your teaching, then I can only blame myself. You can't be blamed. You do not need to worry. Hearing this, Wei Chuanqiu began to ponder. He realized that Yu Qianqiu's request was actually not excessive. The 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra was broad and profound. If he taught her a portion, it would not affect him much. After all, Yu Qianqiu did not ask him to teach her everything he knew. He only needed her to reach a certain level within 100 years. Most importantly, although this fellow's cultivation was not high, his methods were unfathomable. Who knows, he might really be able to solve some of the troubles in the process of cultivating the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra. This would also be beneficial to him. After thinking it over, Wei Chuanqiu said, I can promise you. However, what if you do not return my inner core after this, or leak out the secret that I possess the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra? You have a handle on me, but I have no way to deal with you. Words have no proof. How do you expect me to believe you? That's easy. I'll just give you a handle on me to put you at ease. As soon as Yu Qianqiu finished speaking, he stood up in a flash. His eyes that were staring at Wei Chuanqiu suddenly lit up with two purple flames. At this moment, a purple flame suddenly burst out from Yu Qianqiu's body. A majestic and powerful energy violently burst out. The terrifying temperature that could incinerate everything was emitted. The raging purple flames shook people's hearts. The purple brilliance was magnificent and magnificent. Yu Qianqiu quietly stood on the jade couch. His body was surrounded by the purple flames. He was like an evil god as he coldly stared at Wei Chuanqiu. He carefully controlled the majestic power of the purple flames. Otherwise, the Jade Palace would instantly become an underground ruin. However, he could not avoid letting Wei Chuanqiu have a taste of it. Otherwise, how could he convince Wei Chuanqiu? Wei Chuanqiu was immediately startled by the high temperature. At first, he was able to use his profound cultivation to barely block it. However, when the terrifying temperature truly pressed down on him, he immediately let out an ah and dodged far away. Dumbfounded, he pointed at Yu Qianqiu and stammered, could this be the purple flames? When Yu Qianqiu was controlling his inner core, he did not recognize what it was. However, at this moment, when the terrifying purple flames appeared, he immediately recognized it. To Wei Chuanqiu's knowledge, besides the purple flames, There was nothing else that could imitate such a terrifying purple flame. The dazzling purple light that was refracted by the entire Jade Palace gradually dimmed. The raging purple flames were slowly withdrawn into Yu Qianqiu's body. Yu Qianqiu stood on the couch with his hands clasped behind his back. He indifferently said, "Bat King Wei's eyesight is indeed not ordinary. To actually be able to recognize it. That's right, it is the purple flames." After receiving confirmation, Wei Chuanqiu's small eyes suddenly widened. He exclaimed from a distance away from Yu Qianqiu, "How is this possible? How could you possibly hide the purple flames in your body?" Hehe. Bat King doesn't need to worry about this. Yu Qianqiu teleported in front of Wei Chuanqiu. Facing him, he smiled and asked, "Apart from me, the only one who knows the secret of the purple flames in my body is you. Once this news gets out, I'm sure immortal Emperor Jin Tai won't let me off." With such a big weakness given to Bat King, I'm sure Bat King now feels safe. I wonder if Bat King still has any doubts? Wei Chuanqiu let out a breath of cold air. He slowly shook his head and said, "Unbelievable, truly unbelievable. I've only heard of people using magical treasures to contain purple flames, but I've never heard of anyone storing purple flames in their body. As expected, there is always someone better out there. I've finally seen it. Falling into your hands today is not an injustice. Since you're so sincere, what else do I have to say? Good. I promise you." Hehe. Bat King is straightforward. This is the attitude that a cooperation should have. Yu Qianqiu laughed happily. Wei Chuanqiu immediately rolled his eyes. Is this considered a cooperation? You're clearly blackmailing me into helping you. The corner of his mouth twitched. Suddenly, he curiously asked, "Who is the disciple you want to introduce to me? Is it worth it for you to divulge such an important secret that endangers your own safety?" Chapter 854. Yu Qianqiu's eyes, which had been fostered by scheming all day long, showed a hint of gentleness, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Shaking his head, he said, "Only by finding someone worth sacrificing for can one live a meaningful life. As for who it is, you will naturally know when you meet them." Wei Chuanqiu's sly eyebrows twitched as he winked and said, "I'm guessing it must be a woman." Looking at his appearance, it seemed he had completely forgotten about the miserable state he had been in when he was beaten. But then again, after getting hold of Yu Qianqiu's weakness, his tightened heart finally relaxed. What he did not know was that this was the mindset of a despicable person like Yu Qianqiu. It seemed easy, but in reality, it was very difficult. Most people would not dare to take a risk that could completely endanger their lives. But Yu Qianqiu, who loved to take advantage of others, knew that there was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. The more one wanted to obtain, the more the price to pay would always be proportional. One could not stubbornly cling to one's own benefits and not let others take advantage of them. Otherwise, one would die a miserable death sooner or later. This was the saying, where there is gain, there is loss. Sometimes, taking the initiative to give up a little would often result in more. Take a step back and you will see the world. Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly and did not answer whether he was a man or a woman. Turning to a serious face, he said, "Bat King Wei, the 100-year period is starting to take effect. You have been cooped up here for 10,000 years. Now it is time to come out with me to get some fresh air." Wei Chuanqiu's expression twitched as he looked around the huge Jade Palace. Smiling bitterly, he said, "You spent so much effort to get me out, but what do you want me to help you with? It can't be that I will lose my life before the 100-year period ends, right?" Yu Qianqiu looked at him and said with a smile, "Could it be that the green-winged Bat King I fancy is so useless? Haha, don't look at me like that. I am not trying to provoke you. Perhaps one day you will find that leaving this place with me is the best choice. I hope your words are auspicious." Wei Chuanqiu cupped his hands at him in a bad mood. "Haha, come with me. If you continue to be so long-winded, I'll release a purple flame and turn this place into a proper bat nest." After saying that, Yu Qianqiu took the lead and dashed out of the cave. He threw a silver ball into the winding passageway and rushed out of the cave to wait. Not long after, a green light flashed and Wei Chuanqiu appeared at the entrance of the cave. She turned around and looked at the entrance with a frown. I have to find something to block the entrance of the cave, so that no one can destroy the jade palace inside. That's easy. I'll help you. Yu Qianqiu floated in front of him and stretched out his 5 claws at the entrance of the cave. The rocks at the entrance of the cave began to change silently and slowly fused together. In the blink of an eye, the entrance of the cave disappeared. The stone wall that seemed to have been cut by knives and axes was no different from the weathered stone walls around it. Who would have thought that there would be a cave behind this stone wall? Wei Chuanqiu was dumbfounded. He had seen people who could control earth, but he didn't think that there would be someone who could control stone and change it at will. He looked at Yu Qianqiu speechlessly. He found that this guy was really unfathomable. How could a soul formation stage cultivator have so many magical methods? Could it be that after staying in the cave for 10,000 years, he had lost touch with the outside world? Wei Chuanqiu shook his head and took out a jade talisman. He injected something into it and crushed it. A faint light quickly disappeared into the air. Yu Qianqiu was no longer a rookie in the celestial realm. He knew that this was the celestial realm's communication method. However, he couldn't use such a high-level communication method before reaching the celestial realm. He coughed and asked, "Who are you communicating with? Tell Xiao Changquan not to disturb me without my permission." Wei Chuanqiu threw the jade talisman in his hand. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and sneered. "Hee, I'm going to settle the score with him." "Settle the score with him?" Wei Chuanqiu said unhappily. "He is my man after all. Are you not going to give me face? What's more, I didn't want to be disturbed, so I told him that he wouldn't take the initiative to cause trouble. You must have done something first. Otherwise he wouldn't have done it." Yu Qianqiu was dazed. He immediately remembered that he burned the bat cave out of curiosity. He waved his hand and said, "For your sake, I'll let this matter go. I won't pursue it anymore." Yu Qianqiu became spirited. He rubbed his hands and said excitedly, "To hallucinatory immortal city first." Wei Chuanqiu said. Cold wind howled in the abyss. The cold wind howled incessantly in the innumerable gully abyss. The two of them directly soared into the sky from the abyss one after the other, flying away quickly. Almost in the blink of an eye, Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. He cursed in his heart and desperately chased after it. Wei Chuanqiu, who forgot about Yu Qianqiu, also reacted. He looked back and found that Yu Qianqiu was nowhere to be found. He immediately recalled that Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was only at the soul formation stage. Furthermore, he was born with the ability to fly. His flying speed was one of the best in the immortal world. How could Yu Qianqiu catch up to him? He stopped in the air and waited for a while before he saw Yu Qianqiu chasing after him. As he flew, he shouted, "Bat King Wei, don't just care about yourself." Wei Chuanqiu waited for him to catch up and slowly flew with him. After flying for a while, Wei Chuanqiu asked impatiently, "With your speed, it will be a month later when we reach hallucinatory immortal city, right? That long?" Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He said, "How about you use a flying shuttle to carry me?" Wei Chuanqiu said, "Give me the flying shuttle." Yu Qianqiu shook his head. "I don't have that." Wei Chuanqiu said in disdain, "You don't have it. Who in the immortal realm has seen me use a flying shuttle? Why don't you show your true form and carry me?" Yu Qianqiu asked weakly. As he expected, Wei Chuanqiu roared, "You think I'm your immortal beast mount?" He turned around and was about to leave. "Wait, I almost forgot." Yu Qianqiu grabbed him, and the two of them stopped in the air. Yu Qianqiu took out a black thing with 2 sharp ends and a round middle from his storage bag. Wei Chuanqiu looked at him suspiciously and threw it out with a spell. In the blink of an eye, a black and cold strange thing appeared in the air. "What is this?" Wei Chuanqiu looked at the smooth and streamlined strange thing that looked like a round shuttle. Yu Qianqiu looked at the words, Utopia 001, on the flying shuttle and chuckled. "You'll know later." He performed a spell, and the flying shuttle's belly flipped, revealing the entrance. After the two of them entered, Wei Chuanqiu kept shaking his head. He looked at the empty space and asked, "Is this a flying treasure?" It's actually made of nether iron." He touched everything inside. Yu Qianqiu closed the cabin door, and the cabin instantly became dark. Wei Chuanqiu chuckled and said, Are you thinking of flying blindfolded? Just as he finished speaking, there was a buzzing sound from a spring. His eyes lit up, and 8 transparent crystal windows appeared. He could see everything outside clearly. Wei Chuanxiu waved his extraordinarily large sleeves and walked forward curiously. Yu Qianqiu sat on the only chair at the top, and the entire flying shuttle rapidly accelerated forward. Wei Chuanxiu's eyes immediately lit up. He leaned against the back of the chair and sized up the transparent crystal windows. His eyes filled with curiosity. After looking for a while, he coughed and said, "There's only one chair here. Aren't you embarrassed to let me stand alone?" Yu Qianqiu found it funny, but he deliberately looked forward and said, "This seat is for the person driving the flying shuttle. Sigh. With your cultivation level, your speed is too slow. Move aside, let me do it." Wei Chuanqiu vaguely mentioned what he wanted to do. Yu Qianqiu didn't argue with him and gave the seat to him. With Wei Chuanqiu's cultivation level, the flying shuttle was indeed faster than him. Wei Chuanqiu sat on it, and after asking how to pilot it, he directly drove it like crazy. The speed was extremely fast. The corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth curled up into a smile. He could go to the back cabin to sleep now. When he turned around and walked to the back cabin, he felt that his center of gravity was a little unstable. It was obvious that the flying speed was getting faster and faster. Just as he walked to the back cabin door, he suddenly heard a strange creaking sound. He couldn't help but turn around and shouted, "Stop." There were already many cracks on the 8 transparent crystal windows. Unfortunately, he shouted a little too late. Bang! The crystal windows all shattered, and a strong gust of wind rushed in. The flying shuttle immediately stopped. Wei Chuanqiu sat on the chair dumbfounded. He said in surprise, "Why is it so weak?" Yu Qianqiu was speechless. This thing was made by the Jing family, one of the 4 great clans in the human world. The Jing family probably didn't expect that one day it would be controlled by an immortal emperor. At such a high speed, it was normal that the crystal windows couldn't withstand the pressure and broke. The 2 of them quietly flew out of the broken window. Yu Qianqiu used a spell to keep the flying shuttle. He held it in his hand and said bitterly, "There's only one of this in the entire celestial realm. I borrowed it from someone to play with. Now it's destroyed by your hands. How am I going to explain this to others?" Wei Chuanqiu believed him. There probably wasn't another such strange thing in the celestial realm. He smiled awkwardly and said, "This thing can't be looked at or not. It's fine if it's destroyed. Let's continue on our way." Yu Qianqiu wasn't someone to be trifled with. Now that he had found an excuse, he wouldn't give up so easily. He immediately said expressionlessly, "I think you should just show your true form and carry me." Wei Chuanqiu couldn't say anything about an immortal beast or a mount anymore. It was his fault for destroying someone else's precious item. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "This is the only time. There won't be a next time." The green fog exploded, and a huge green bat with a wingspan of 5 to 6 meters appeared. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. He didn't need Wei Chuanqiu to tell him to stand on the bat. The ferocious-looking bat carried him and disappeared into the distance. Chapter 855. The vast land was filled with undulating mountains and valleys, and the winding rivers surged endlessly. Above the clear blue sky, a ray of green light directly streaked across like a shuttle. Yu Qianqiu stood on the back of the giant bat with his hands clasped behind his back, silently admiring the magnificent mountains and rivers below. His heart was filled with emotions. It was not because of the beauty of the mountains and rivers, but because he had never thought that one day he would be able to control an immortal beast with the cultivation of an immortal emperor. He reckoned that those who could control an immortal beast of this level were not ordinary people. On the other hand, Wei Chuanqiu, who had revealed its true form and was flapping its wings, flew in silence, as if it was suppressing a breath of resentment in its heart. No matter how Yu Qianqiu tried to strike up a conversation, it did not reply, and from the giant bat's ferocious face, he could not see its expression. As the 2-meter-long wings flapped, a faint green splendor sprayed out like a rainbow. As the wings flapped, the edges of the wings undulated with a brilliant green arc of light. It was extremely beautiful. Yu Qianqiu originally thought that he would have to withstand a huge wind pressure standing on top of it. After all, the flying speed was too fast. However, to his surprise, as soon as this giant bat flew, its body immediately surged out a very beautiful arc-shaped green light shield, breaking through the air and flying rapidly. The green light was like a thin nebula, rising from the head of the giant bat, sliding down to its tail, forming a green light tail. It was truly indescribably beautiful. Yu Qianqiu stood on Wei Chuanqiu's back, as if he was in a dream. He did not feel the wind pressure brought by the high-speed flying at all. It was a very magical feeling. Every time the green wings slowly flapped, the beautiful scenery of the mountains and rivers below would quickly fade away. It could be seen how fast Wei Chuanqiu's flying speed was. One man, one bat. After a silent stalemate for a whole day, Yu Qianqiu had already sat down with his legs crossed. He took out a piece of roasted meat from God knows where, and it was the kind that was filled with hot steam, the kind that was overflowing with fragrance. He took a bite and chewed twice. The other hand was pouring fine wine into his mouth. In both of Yu Qianqiu's lives, this was the first time he had done something so pleasurable. Not only was it like falling into a dream, there was also the constantly changing scenery below. Plus he was high up in the sky. The rosy clouds were passing by, and there was fine wine and delicious food. The word pleasurable could not describe it. The giant bat flapped its wings and looked back from time to time, its eyes filled with uncontrollable anger. Yu Qianqiu burped as he shook the roasted meat in his hand. With a concerned look on his face, he asked, "Bat Kingwei, do you want to stop and eat something?" The bat suddenly turned around and ignored him. This was the first time in his life that he had become someone else's mount. One could imagine the grievance in his heart. Suddenly, he felt a cold dripping sensation on his back. When he turned around to look, he immediately flew into a rage. He saw Yu Qianqiu raising the wine pot and gulping it down. The clear wine flowed out from the corner of his mouth and wet his back. He immediately roared, "Yu Qianqiu, who do you think I am? Don't be too presumptuous." I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to." Yu Qianqiu apologized again and again. He spread his fingers and tried the absorbing star's great art. A cloud of white mist rose and was sucked into his palm. The wet area was instantly dried up. The giant bat's pupils shrank when it saw the cloud of white mist entering his palm. It snorted coldly and turned around. A smile hung on Yu Qianqiu's face. He finally forced the sky to speak. Seizing the chance, he coughed and asked, "Bat Kingwei, how much longer do we need to reach the hallucinatory immortal city?" Wei Chuanqiu's anger had yet to dissipate, so he ignored him and flew straight ahead. Suddenly, he saw a tall mountain in the distance. There were perilous peaks everywhere, clouds swirled around them, and white cranes danced among the towering ancient pines. There was a clear spring in the mountain, and a waterfall splashed like the Milky Way. The green mountains and clear waters were lush and green. Yu Qianqiu threw away the food in his hand and jumped to his feet. His eyes shone as he clicked his tongue and said, "What a paradise! Bat Kingwei, let's go take a look." The giant bat's sharp eyes shrank. It flapped its wings and changed the direction of its flight. It wanted to go around the paradise that Yu Qianqiu mentioned. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. "Bat Kingwei, this isn't the way to the hallucinatory immortal city, right?" "Shut up," the giant bat said in human voice. "I'm more familiar with the way to go than you are." Not long after the two left the mountain, a white light shot out from the perilous peak and chased after them. The giant bat turned around to take a look. It flapped its wings even faster and flew away at an unbelievable speed. However, the white light's speed was not any slower than Wei Chuanqiu's. It gradually caught up to them. Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. He felt something was wrong. He frowned and said, "Bat Kingwei, is that your enemy?" "Shut up. It's all because of you. I've lost so much face today." Wei Chuanqiu's tone was a little impatient. Just as he finished speaking, the white light increased its speed again. It quickly caught up to them and flew side by side with Wei Chuanqiu. Within the white light was a white-robed man. His hair was as white as snow and was simply tied behind his head. He had a pair of white sword-like eyebrows, and his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. His entire person had an extraordinary aura. and the first impression he gave off was very intimidating. Yu Qianqiu immediately became vigilant. A person who could fly as fast as Bat King Wei and make Bat King Wei feel apprehensive must have a high cultivation. However, the strange thing was that Bat King Wei and that person didn't even look at each other. They just flew faster and faster. It was so fast that Yu Qianqiu's eyes were a little dazzled. He couldn't see the scenery in the sky and on the ground clearly. Everything flashed by in a flash. The stalemate didn't last long. The white-clothed man was already ahead of Bat King Wei. The latter tried his best to catch up, but he couldn't. The former was ahead of Bat King Wei for half a day. Wei Chuanxiu seemed to know he couldn't catch up, so he simply slowed down and adjusted his flying direction. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his chin as he observed the streak of white light that was growing further and further away. He discovered that the two did not seem to be enemies. However, from how the two of them were competing with each other, it was clear that the two of them wanted to compete with each other in terms of speed. Just as he was about to ask Wei Chuanxiu who the other person was, he suddenly saw the white light change direction and chase after them again. Not long after, the white-clothed man was flying side by side with Wei Chuanxiu again. Yu Qianqiu was staring at the other person. At this time, the white-clothed man also slowly turned his cold face over. He stared at Yu Qianqiu with a gaze as cold as ice. When he discovered that he couldn't see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, a trace of surprise appeared in his cold eyes. Before, I thought I was mistaken. I didn't think it really was you, a stinky bat who's been hiding somewhere for tens of thousands of years. The white-clothed man's gaze fell on Wei Chuanxiu. With a face full of disdain, he coldly snorted and said, I didn't think that the grand green-winged Bat King, who was quite a character 10,000 years ago, would become someone else's immortal beast mount. No wonder you're too ashamed to face others, and have to avoid me by circling around White Cloud Mountain. Bullshit. Wei Chuanxiu, who had been silent all this time, couldn't help but curse. He turned to the white-clothed man and shouted, Yunpeng, who's someone else's immortal beast mount? Speak clearly for this daddy. The white-clothed man called Yunpeng coldly glanced at Yu Qianqiu. His meaning was self-evident. He was referring to Yu Qianqiu as Wei Chuanxiu's immortal beast mount. Wei Chuanxiu straightened his neck and roared, What can you see with those bird eyes of yours? His cultivation is only at the soul formation final stage. Use your brain and think about it. With his cultivation, how could I lower myself to become his immortal beast mount? I'm just giving him a ride because I broke his flying treasure. You're looking down on people with bird eyes. Yunpeng was startled. He carefully examined Yu Qianqiu again. His eyes were filled with confusion. Clearly, he was still confused that he couldn't see through his opponent's cultivation. However, he also knew that since Wei Chuanxiu could say something like this, he definitely wasn't his mount. After all, no immortal beast mount would say something like that about their master. Yunpeng's gaze returned to Wei Chuanxiu. He shook his head coldly and said, I can't believe that after 10,000 years, your cultivation still hasn't improved. In terms of speed, you're no longer my match. After so many years, we've finally decided who's better. Wei Chuanxiu, do you admit defeat? Admit your bird feather. Wei Chuanxiu sneered. I can't be bothered to argue with you. You're still so stupid and shameless. You clearly saw that I was carrying a person on my back, yet you still shamelessly came to compete with me in speed. Only you could do this. Yu Qianqiu looked at Yunpeng suspiciously. Hearing Wei Chuanxiu call him bird, he deeply doubted Yunpeng's identity as a human. Less nonsense. Do you admit defeat or not? Yunpeng said indifferently. If you don't, you can put him down. We'll have another fair and square competition to see who's better. Wei Chuanxiu was speechless. He knew his own situation very well. For the past 10,000 years, he didn't cultivate at all. He only focused on researching the Myriad Demon Heart Sutra. In addition, his condensed inner core was burned twice by Yu Qianqiu with his purple fire. In reality, his cultivation was no longer the same as it was 10,000 years ago. If he really wanted to compete, he definitely wouldn't be Yunpeng's match. Even so, the large bat's eyes darted around as if he thought of something. He then said with disdain, Yunpeng, you really didn't live these 10,000 years in vain. As expected, you've become more and more cunning. I've already flown for a long time. Adding on the fact that I was carrying a person to compete with you. I've used up too much energy. Even if I put him down and compete with you now, do you think it can be considered a fair and square competition? Humph. Even if you want to take advantage of me, you shouldn't do it like this. Yinping's white eyebrows furrowed. He muttered, then why don't you come to my Baiyin mountain to rest first? When you've recovered, we'll have another fair and square competition. At that time, I'll make you accept your defeat. Wayback King continued to fly forward. He sneered and replied, I don't have your free time. I promised to send him to hallucinatory Immortal City. Let's talk about the competition when there's a chance. Yinping's cold face was full of disdain. He said coldly, don't tell me you know you can't do it, so you're looking for an excuse. Wayback King suddenly turned around and said word by word, if you really want to compete, why don't you reveal your true form? Just like how I carried him to compete with you. Do you dare to carry him and compete with me? Chapter 856. Competing in flying speed wasn't like competing in anything else. For those who were evenly matched, even the slightest bit of burden could be the key to victory or defeat. However, Yun Peng could already see that Wei Chuanxiu, who had been evenly matched with him in terms of speed, was now at a disadvantage. She was no match for him at all. Even if he had more people on him, Wei Chuanxiu's chances of winning were very slim. Both of them were descendants of primordial fierce beasts and immortal beasts that had reached the early stage of immortal emperor, but didn't become humans' mounts. Moreover, both of them specialized in speed, which was rare in the entire immortal world. Even though the two of them had always been competing with each other, they secretly appreciated each other and shared the same fate. They had disregarded their own safety many times to help each other in times of danger. 10,000 years ago, Wei Chuanxiu's sudden disappearance made Yin Peng search almost the entire immortal world. After searching for 100 years, he still couldn't find Wei Chuanxiu's shadow. In the end, he suspected that Wei Chuanxiu was in danger. After all, it was very normal to fight and kill in the immortal world. Unexpectedly, while he was meditating on the dangerous peak of Baiyin Mountain, he suddenly saw a giant bat carrying a person. Who else could it be but Wei Chuanxiu? At first, he thought he was seeing things until he saw that the bat intentionally went around Baiyin Mountain. Yunping immediately confirmed that this giant bat was Wei Chuanxiu, who had mysteriously disappeared for 10,000 years. He immediately chased after it and found that it was indeed this guy. Thus, the two of them who had been separated for many years didn't say anything when they met. Why wouldn't I dare? Yin Peng stared at Wei Chuanxiu and said indifferently, I'm just afraid that you won't admit it after you lose. At that time, you will come up with all sorts of excuses to not admit defeat. Don't talk nonsense here. When have I ever lied? Wei Chuanxiu's eyes lit up as he looked straight ahead and said in a cadence, the final destination is Hallucination Immortal City. The first to arrive wins, and the second to arrive willingly admit defeat. Is that okay? When Yu Qianqiu heard this, he immediately became spirited. He excitedly rubbed his hands together and said, I think it's fine. In any case, I'm also participating. Let me be a witness. His gaze swept over the two of them, inwardly wondering who would be more comfortable to sit on. Yin Peng glanced at Yu Qianqiu and said to Wei Chuanxiu, sure, but let me say the ugly words first. If anyone dares to play tricks along the way, don't blame me for being merciless. The meaning behind his words was clear. He suspected that Yu Qianqiu would help Wei Chuanxiu create trouble. Yu Qianqiu looked at Wei Chuanxiu speechlessly. He coldly snorted and transmitted his voice to Wei Chuanxiu. Bat King Wei, it seems like your character isn't that good. You have dragged me into this mess and made me a villain in others' eyes. Wei Chuanxiu flew into a rage and roared at Yin Peng. Yin Peng, listen up. If this brat dares to cause trouble in the middle of the journey, you don't have to do anything. I'll kill him first. What does it have to do with me? Yu Qianqiu's expression stiffened. After a long while, he managed to spit out the word F***ck. He, an outsider, had become the victim. Yin Peng coldly snorted and flew shoulder to shoulder with Wei Chuanxiu. His body suddenly emitted a blinding white light, startling Yu Qianqiu. A huge bird with a wingspan of more than 10 meters, twice the size of Wei Chuanqiu's original form, appeared in the sky. Its pure white feathers were like white jade, sparkling and translucent, emitting a hazy white light. There was not a single blemish on its body, making it look somewhat unreal. Its sharp eyes were deep and threatening. Its beak was curved like a golden hook, and its huge and sharp claws were also golden. Its body was protected by an arc-shaped light barrier that looked like a white nebula. Its jade-like wings soared into the sky, giving off an extraordinary aura. This was a pure descendant of the desolate era, the great golden rock with jade wings. Yu Qianqiu's eyes were filled with endless amazement. It was truly too beautiful. Wei Chuanqiu, on the other hand, was not surprised at all. He quickly moved toward the cloud rock, and suddenly flipped himself above the cloud rock. His body emitted a powerful force. As he flipped himself in the air, he directly pushed Yu Qianqiu away. F***CK. Stinky bat, what are you trying to do? Ugh. Before he could react, Yu Qianqiu let loose a torrent of curses. The flying speed of these two cultivators was truly frightening. It was truly frightening to be thrown from such a high altitude. When he stabilized himself, Yu Qianqiu discovered that he had already landed on Yin Peng's back. He was safe and sound. He immediately understood what was going on and shut his mouth. Yin Peng looked back, and his eyes flashed with astonishment. He was now beginning to suspect Yu Qianqiu's identity. How could a soul formation cultivator dare to curse Wei Chuanqiu, an immortal emperor cultivator? Wasn't this worthy of suspicion? Wei Chuanqiu shifted his position and flew shoulder to shoulder with Yin Peng. The two of them glanced at each other and sped up at the same time. Two rays of light, one green and one white, shot into the sky like shooting stars, becoming the two most dazzling spots in the sky. On a flying shuttle, 3 middle-aged men stood in a triangle at the front, followed by 2 elders and a young man and a young woman. All of them wore the same dark green uniform. The 7 of them were all Hidden Dragon Mountain Manor immortal cultivators. The 2 elders in the middle were Hidden Dragon Mountain Manor elders. One was called Duke Longyu, and the other was called Guangjuanru. The 6 men and 1 woman stared dumbfoundedly at the 2 streaks of light flying away. They had clearly seen the changes that had occurred in the sky just now. In particular, Yu Qianqiu's cursing fit the situation very well. After a long time, the man driving the flying shuttle at the front said, "So fast." He thought that his flying shuttle was fast enough, but compared to the other party's flying speed, it was simply incomparable. He was simply too far behind to catch up. Green Wingbat King Wei Chuanqiu, White Cloud Mountain Lord Yin Peng, Duke Longyu and Guangjuanru looked at each other and called out a name. Hearing these 2 names, a commotion broke out on the flying shuttle. These 2 were famous figures in the immortal world. The others had only heard of them, but never met them. Duke Longyu was startled. These 2 experts haven't appeared together in the immortal world for a long time. I didn't expect to see them together again today. Guangjuanru shook his head and sighed. Wasn't there a rumor that Green Wingbat King Wei Chuanqiu is dead? Why did he appear again after 10,000 years? Rumors can be real or fake. Now that we've seen Green Wingbat King, rumors are just rumors, we can't take them seriously. Duke Longyu sighed and looked far into the sky, looking at the direction they're going. Could they be heading to the hallucinatory immortal city like us? That's not for sure. They rarely appear. I'm afraid they won't go to that crowded place. Guangjuanru pondered. The young man behind him glanced at the beautiful lady with a slender waist and voluptuous breasts. Seeing her bright eyes and confused face, he asked, "Grandpa, who is that young man who landed on White Cloud Mountain Lord? I heard that Green Wingbat King and White Cloud Mountain Lord hate immortal beasts being other people's mounts. Why would they ride on this person?" The young man was Guangjuanru's grandson Guang Nianzu. The beautiful lady beside him was Duke Longyu's granddaughter, Long Xiaojiu. The former seemed to know the latter very well. Duke Longyu nodded and said, "I think it's strange too. Unfortunately, I was too focused on Wei Chuanqiu and Yin Peng. I didn't see the young man's face clearly. I wonder what kind of expert he is to make these 2 experts ride on him willingly. Does junior martial brother Guang know this person?" He noticed that Guang Juanru was frowning in thought, so he asked. I didn't pay much attention to him, but he does look familiar. Guang Juanru stroked his beard and pondered. Suddenly, he raised his head and said in shock. It's him? How is this possible? Everyone on the flying shuttle stared at him. Duke Longyu smiled faintly and said, Junior Marshal Brother Guang, don't keep us guessing. Who is this person? Guang Juanru smiled and shook his head. I saw him when I led the team to the God Ruin Realm meeting. This person is the most famous young man after the God Ruin Realm meeting. But everyone says he's a demigod wandering cultivator. Why is he riding on Wei Chuanxiu and Yin Peng's back? This is simply unimaginable. When everyone heard this, they looked at each other in disbelief. Duke Longyu frowned and said, could this person be the Yu Qianqiu who single-handedly killed 30 disciples of Heartless Palace in the Divine Ruin Realm? If I'm not wrong, it should be him. Guang Junru smiled bitterly. Everyone said that he has offended Heartless Palace, and they will definitely not let him go. But who would have thought that he has the support of Green Wing Bat King and White Cloud Mountain Lord? I'm afraid that even if Heartless Palace wants to touch him, they will have to think twice. If these two old monsters join hands, if those old fellows from Heartless Palace don't come out, they probably won't be able to do anything to Yu Qianqiu. After all, these two old monsters are not to be trifled with. Long Xiaojiu, who had been depressed all this while, suddenly bit her lips. Hatred flashed across her eyes as she asked, this Yu Qianqiu should be that Wan Ling's lover, right? I heard that Wan Ling shamelessly flirted with that Yu Qianqiu in front of everyone. Grandpa Guang, you were at the scene, you should have seen it too, right? The flying shuttle instantly became silent. Everyone was secretly sizing each other up. Ancestor Guang Nianzu looked at Long Xiaojiu with a complicated expression. Everyone present knew that Long Xiaojiu and Wan Ling were archenemies. Long Xiaojiu was originally in love with a handsome young man, and both parties were already discussing marriage. Who knew that Wan Ling would suddenly come out and interfere, and actually bewitched the man who was about to become Long Xiaojiu's husband away? The most infuriating thing was that after Wan Ling coaxed that man to break up with Long Xiaojiu, she also kicked that man away. In the end, that man found Long Xiaojiu to repent and beg her to forgive him. Long Xiaojiu, who suffered great humiliation, killed that man in a fit of anger, which caused quite a bit of trouble. Fortunately, Hidden Dragon Mountain Manor was strong enough, and this matter was finally settled. But Long Xiaojiu and Wan Ling were at loggerheads, almost regardless of the occasion. As long as they met, they would make a big fuss, but Long Xiaojiu always suffered losses in Wan Ling's hands. Chapter 857. In short, Long Xiaojiu was always at a disadvantage in every aspect of the battle. Even in terms of their respective backgrounds, Long Xiaojiu was slightly inferior. Putting aside whether Wan Gutong or Hidden Dragon Manor was more powerful, the important thing was that Wan Ling's grandfather was Wan Gutong's sect master, while Long Xiaojiu's grandfather was only an elder of Hidden Dragon Manor. On this point, Long Xiaojiu was at a huge disadvantage. There were some things Wan Ling dared to say and do, because Wan Bosheng could handle it. But when it came to Long Xiaojiu, she would have many scruples. After all, her grandfather could not be the master of Hidden Dragon Manor. Duke Longyu furrowed his brows, sighed slightly and said, Little Jiu Heir, let bygones be bygones. There's no need to hold a grudge against a man who isn't worth it. Otherwise, you'll be the one who gets hurt in the end. He then gave Guang Juanru a meaningful glance, and the latter immediately gave Guang Nianzu a meaningful glance as well. Long Xiaojiu had been depressed ever since she experienced that setback in her relationship, and Guang Nianzu had been her firm pursuer for a long time. Thus, the elders of both sides had the intention of matchmaking. This trip to hallucinatory Immortal City, the two elders said that they were going to do something, but in reality, it was to create an opportunity for the two of them. In reality, if this was in the past, Guang Juanru would not have been willing, even though he was Duke Long Yu's junior brother. The main reason he was unwilling was because Long Xiaojiu's setback in her relationship became the biggest joke in the immortal world. Just as she was about to marry, her man was snatched away by another woman. To put it bluntly, her reputation was not too good. Guang Juanru naturally did not want his grandson's reputation to be affected. However, the world was full of setbacks. Guang Juanru led a team to participate in the God Ruins Realm gathering. But the entire team was annihilated. Originally, all the sects were in similar situations, so it was not a loss of face for Hidden Dragon Manor. However, the key was that his background in the sect was not deep, because the direct descendants of Hidden Dragon Manor all had the surname Long, and he was an external elder. Thus, there were people who wanted to use this matter to mess with him. At this time, Long Yu was worried about Long Xiaojiu's marriage. Although he knew that his granddaughter was still pure, there were all kinds of rumors going around. His granddaughter had actually become a youth shu, causing all the young geniuses who were interested to avoid Long Xiaojiu like a snake or a scorpion. There were great talents who wanted to play around, but if he really wanted to marry her, everyone would think that it was a joke, and they would all tactfully refuse. Duke Longyu was enraged. He naturally couldn't let his granddaughter become someone else's plaything. Coincidentally, his junior martial brother was asking for help at this time. He immediately remembered that his junior martial brother's grandson was a firm pursuer of his granddaughter. In the past, he couldn't ask his junior martial brother for help, but now, therefore, Duke Longyu hinted vaguely to see if they could get married. At this point, Guang Juanru couldn't refuse anymore. He knew that if something happened to him, his grandson's future would be bleak. Sometimes reputation was not as important as one's life. Thus, no matter how he felt, he still agreed happily on the surface. He was straightforward, but Duke Longyu was even more straightforward. He immediately used all the connections he could, and successfully helped his junior brother overcome this obstacle. This was why the two old guys took the lead and match-made the two youngsters. This was really a painstaking effort. After Guang Nianzu received his grandfather's hint, he immediately smiled at Long Xiaojiu. Xiaojiu, why bother with a woman like that? Who doesn't know that she used Wan Bosheng to run amok in the immortal world? Don't worry, someone will take care of her sooner or later. Long Xiaojiu looked at him indifferently, as if she was looking at a stranger. She unintentionally glanced at her grandfather who was frowning and looking at her. She immediately squeezed out a smile and replied to Guang Nianzu. N. Guang Nianzu's joy was written all over his face. He pointed at the beautiful scenery of the mountains and rivers below, and chattered endlessly. Long Xiaojiu cooperated with him with a forced smile, and nodded continuously. She was a man of few words, and refused to give a complete sentence to Guang Nianzu. Guang Nianzu didn't mind. Although his grandfather Guang Juanru also had a smile on his face, it was a little unnatural. Some were happy and some were sad. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu had forgotten all his worries. He sat cross-legged on the back of the cloud rock with a smug smile on his face. His shoulders trembled as he laughed. From time to time, he waved his hand and shouted at Wei Chuanqiu who was chasing after him. That King Wei. Faster, faster, we'll catch up soon. Hee. One in front and one behind. One green and one white. Two streams of light cut through the sky. The surrounding clouds disappeared in an instant. It had to be said that carrying a person was indeed a burden in a competition of pure speed. However, Wei Chuanqiu was still clearly at a disadvantage. From the beginning, they were flying shoulder to shoulder. Now they were half a body lower. Now there was a distance of nearly 100 meters between them. However, Big Bat's eyes had turned red. Clearly, he was very competitive and his eyes were bloodshot. No one knew when it started, but there were more and more streams of light coming and going in the surroundings. All the immortal cultivators that were tearing through the sky were shocked by this world-shocking speed, and all of them stopped in midair as they watched the azure and white streaks of light chase after each other. From time to time, the exclamations of White Cloud Mountain Master and Green-Winged Bat King resounded in the air. What attracted everyone's attention the most was still Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting on the back of the cloud rock, baring his fangs and brandishing his claws at Wei Chuanqiu. After all, the celestial realm was so big. There weren't many people who could recognize him. Yu Qianqiu. The frequency at which the flowing lights of various colors appeared became more and more frequent. Yun Peng. who had been flying quickly in front of him, was shocked when he came into contact with the surprised and shocked gazes. Only then did he realize that he, the master of White Cloud Mountain, had become someone else's mount. If no one saw it, it wouldn't matter. But what was worse was that so many people saw it. That heart of the cloud rock. It instantly became cold. He, who had always been arrogant for the first time, his eyes became evasive and unconfident. He didn't dare to look at everyone's shocked eyes. Due to his absent-mindedness, his speed started to slow down. From the increasing number of people appearing in the surroundings, he could determine that they weren't far from Illusionary Immortal City. The closer they got to Illusionary Immortal City, the more people would appear. Bat King Wei, quick, we're close. Yu Qianqiu excitedly waved his arms. He didn't expect Wei Chuanqiu's potential to be so great. He was actually catching up faster and faster. In reality, this was just his misperception. He was sitting on the cloud rock, and the cloud rock's speed was gradually slowing down. He just couldn't feel it. But to a pursuer like Wei Chuanqiu, he could clearly feel it. Wei Chuanqiu looked around, and was instantly overjoyed. Wei Chuanqiu was very clear about the cloud rock's character. The cloud rock was arrogant and treasured its feathers. How could it be someone else's mount? From the moment Yu Qianqiu landed on his back, Wei Chuanqiu knew that the cloud rock was definitely going to lose. Now that he saw it, it was just as he expected. He had fallen for his trap. The gap between the two was getting smaller. 50 meters, 30 meters, 10 meters. Yu Qianqiu jumped up excitedly. He waved his arms and shouted, Bat King Wei is catching up. Quick. All right, Wei Chuanqiu shouted. The two finally returned to a situation where they were flying side by side. After a short stalemate, Wei Chuanqiu's figure slowly moved forward. He laughed sinisterly and gradually shook off the cloud rock. In the end, the cloud rock was the one chasing him. At this moment, the cloud rock didn't seem to see this scene. His sharp and spirited eyes were somewhat slack as he flew numbly. His arrogant heart was ruthlessly trampled on. He didn't know what was going on. Why did he agree to let Yu Qianqiu ride on his back? But it also felt like he was the one who wanted to compete with Wei Chuanqiu. Actually, the reason was very simple. It was because he saw an old friend that he hadn't seen for 10,000 years. He didn't expect that Wei Chuanqiu was still alive, so he was too excited. However, he was also a person with a cold face but a warm heart. He was used to using actions to express himself. In his heart, continuing the competition from 10,000 years ago was the best greeting gift. Wei Chuanqiu's sinister laughter, as he brushed past, caused the excited Yu Qianqiu to be slightly startled. He sensed that something was wrong. Furthermore, he finally sensed that Yin Peng's speed was gradually slowing down. Looking at the surprised gazes from all around him, he seemed to have guessed something. Damn it! Don't vent your anger on me when you lose. Yu Qianqiu coughed and sat down cross-legged. He no longer cheered for Wei Chuanqiu. Instead, he heavily patted Yin Peng and said, Senior Yin, Bat King Wei has already overtaken you when you weren't paying attention. Yin Peng suddenly woke up from his daze. Hearing the sinister laughter that came from 100 meters away, he immediately understood everything. He immediately shouted angrily, Wei Chuanqiu, you dare to scheme against me. Bullsh*T. If you want to act shamelessly, then say it clearly. If you bet, then you have to accept your loss. Don't play this game. Wei Chuanqiu's voice came from the front. Yin Peng's eyes suddenly burst with a bright light. Without saying anything, his flying speed exploded. He chased after the stars and the moon as he bit towards Wei Chuanqiu. He had already thought it through. Since he had already lost face, he could not let Wei Chuanqiu's scheme succeed. The distance between the two sides immediately began to slowly close. Wei Chuanqiu immediately felt the pressure. In his heart, he cursed Yu Qianqiu for blindly interfering. If he let Yin Peng become stupid for a while longer, then he would definitely win. The two of them instantly went all out. Their flashing speed caused a burst of exclamations in the air. In Chu Tian's eyes, a vast and boundless sea of clouds appeared. There were countless streaks of light rising and falling in the clouds. Because of this, the two of them became even more fierce. Yin Peng was slowly catching up with an unbelievable speed, but in the end, he was still a bit late. In an instant, The two of them rushed into the sky above the vast sea of clouds. The streaks of light scattered to the sides in shock. Wei Chuanxiu, who was leading by nearly 10 meters, suddenly changed his direction. He directly turned and soared into the sky. In the air, he exploded into a cloud of green mist. Yinpeng followed closely behind. In a flash of white light he also appeared. Yu Qianqiu, who had been thrown far away by the inertia, quickly flew towards the two of them. Chapter 858. Above the vast sea of clouds, all kinds of flowing lights appeared and hovered in the air to observe. Green-winged Bat King and White Cloud Mountain Lord. These two titles were constantly being whispered. The two people everyone was talking about were hovering in the air, facing each other. Yunpeng's expression was originally gloomy, but when he heard people talking about when he became that brat's mount, he immediately shouted angrily, "Wei Chuanxiu, why do you want to harm me?" As expected, he exploded. Yu Qianqiu secretly clicked his tongue and quietly retreated a little to avoid being implicated. Wei Chuanxiu asked with a face full of suspicion, "Yunpeng, is there something wrong with your brain? Why don't you tell me when I have harmed you?" Yunpeng choked. He couldn't say that he had become someone else's mount. Seeing this, Wei Chuanxiu coldly snorted and said, "If you lose, then admit defeat honestly. Don't find all kinds of excuses. If you refuse to admit defeat, I can't do anything to you. Say it yourself. Do you admit defeat or not?" Yinpeng's eyes were like cold lightning, staring straight at Wei Chuanxiu. Wei Chuanxiu couldn't help but feel guilty. He immediately waved his hand and said, "If you don't admit defeat, then forget it. I won't force you, just pretend that nothing happened." Then he shouted to Yu Qianqiu, "Let's go." He turned into a flowing light and flew towards the mountains of clouds and the sea of fog below. Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything. He looked at Yunpeng and acted as if he didn't know anything. He chased after Wei Chuanxiu. The two of them passed through the misty clouds one after another, and the view before them suddenly became clear. Below the clouds there were many strange mountains, like stars in a chessboard. On top of every mountain, there were houses of different styles. Some were tall buildings, some were courtyards, some were green tiles and red walls, and some were resplendent in gold and jade. In the middle of the mountains there was a huge square, crowded with people. It was very lively. It was very similar to what Yu Qianqiu saw in the 100 Flowers Valley. It was filled with stalls of small merchants and peddlers. The perimeter of the square began to spread out with many winding main roads, leading in all directions. The winding main roads branched out into many branches, leading to every mountain. Seen from the air, the main and branch roads that wound between the mountains looked like thick and thin gray ribbons, intertwining and intertwining like a labyrinth, dazzling the eyes. There was an endless stream of people on the grayish-white ribbon, and there were people flying across the sky from time to time. It was very lively. The two of them stopped in the air below the clouds and looked down with different expressions. Wei Chuanxiu sighed with emotion. After 10,000 years, he saw the prosperity of the illusory immortal city again. On the other hand, Yu Qianqiu looked around at the various buildings on top of the mountain and asked blankly, "Could this be the hallucinatory immortal city?" He felt that it was different from what he had imagined, and he couldn't tell what was hallucinatory about it. Where else could it be if not the illusory immortal city? Wei Chuanxiu was startled as she spoke. She turned around and sized him up suspiciously. "Could it be that you've never been to the illusory immortal city before?" Yu Qianqiu replied casually, "What's so strange about that? I've always been concentrating on cultivating, and haven't come out to gain experience. It's very normal that I haven't been to the illusory immortal city before." "You're so cunning and despicable, before coming out to gain experience. What would you be like if you came out to gain experience?" Wei Chuanxiu had a face of disbelief. She noticed that she couldn't tell if Yu Qianqiu was speaking the truth or not from his face. Her small eyes were filled with puzzlement as she asked, "What exactly do you want to do here? Could it be that you want to buy or sell something?" "No." Yu Qianqiu turned his head to look at the mountains below. He frowned and said, "Bat Kingwei, where is the Merchant Alliance?" Wei Chuanxiu pointed at the tallest mountain below, and pointed at the magnificent buildings on the mountain. That's the Merchant Alliance. Why are you looking for it? Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up slightly. He rubbed his hands and said, Nothing much, just registering a Merchant Alliance. Wei Qianqiu's expression froze. He sized up Yu Qianqiu in disbelief. You're not joking, are you? Or did I hear wrongly? You want to register a Merchant Alliance? Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and asked, Is there a problem? Wei Qianqiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You're just a soul formation stage itinerant cultivator. Registering a Merchant Alliance? Let's not talk about the large amount of spirit stones needed to register. A Merchant Alliance isn't something that one person can play with. Be careful that you'll be eaten up by others. I want to know what you do for a living. If someone wants to eat me up, you go and beat them up. Yu Qianqiu threw down a sentence disapprovingly, then directly flew towards the grandest building. Wei Qianqiu was stunned on the spot. He was speechless for a long time. What's your relationship with this kid? A question suddenly came from behind. Wei Qianqiu turned around to look at Yun Peng. Actually, he didn't need to turn around to know it was Yun Peng. He smiled bitterly. It's a long story. I'm just unlucky. You should go back to your Baiyin mountain. This kid looks like a troublemaker, no matter how I look at him. Don't get involved. Yun Peng paused. A glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. He then said expressionlessly, Do you think I'm like you, always slacking off? I'm willing to admit defeat. I will abide by the bet from back then. Wei Qianqiu suddenly turned around, waved his sleeves and sighed. Why do you have to do this? You and I both know that was just a joke back then. You and I were competitive. It can't be taken seriously. It's just 10 years, it's no big deal. Yun Peng said indifferently. Back then, the two of them were proud of their speed. Because of a disagreement, they made a bet. Both of them competing in speed. The bet was that the loser would run for 10 years for the winner. At that time, they competed many times, but they were evenly matched, no one could win. Now that Wei Qianqiu had slacked off and won, whether the bet was valid or not depended on both of them. The two of them floated in the air, extremely conspicuous. Wei Qianqiu looked wretched, his body was thin, and his sleeves were strangely big, while Yin Peng's aura was extraordinary. The two of them, one green and one white, formed a clear contrast. The passers-by would size up the two of them from time to time. Those who knew them were in awe. Those who didn't seem to be watching a joke. After a moment of silence, Yun Peng stared at the mountain peak where Yu Qianqiu flew to, and said lightly, Your little friend seems to be in some trouble. Before he finished speaking, Wei Qianqiu had already flashed over, followed by Yun Peng. Yu Qianqiu, who was blocked outside the main hall, looked at the two golden-robed men at the door, feeling depressed. The reason why they didn't let him in was because the guards told him that this place was the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, and only the Chamber of Commerce Alliance matters were handled. Other unrelated people were not allowed to trespass. Yu Qianqiu nodded and bowed, telling them that he was here to register a Chamber of Commerce, but they told him that registering a Chamber of Commerce required a referral from another Chamber of Commerce, otherwise he would not be allowed in. Yu Qianqiu had never heard of this rule, and thought that the two guards were purposely making things difficult for him. But in the end, he was very understanding, and took out 2 storage bags with a smile, and secretly stuffed them into the hands of the two, so that they could make things convenient for him. The 2 guards were dumbfounded. It was the first time they had seen such an open bribe. It was no different from harming them. If they were found out, they would be in trouble. The 2 of them were furious, as if they had caught a hot potato. They could not wait to throw away the storage bags that Yu Qianqiu stuffed into them, and gave a serious warning. Is it too little? Motherf ***. Even a guard's appetite is so big. Yu Qianqiu looked gloomy as he turned around to pick up the 2 storage bags. Coincidentally, Wei Qianqiu and Yun Peng landed in front of him. Wei Qianqiu's gaze swept over the 2 guards, asking suspiciously, What did you stuff into them? Yu Qianqiu lowered his voice and mocked. Their appetite is too big. There are 10 divine-grade spirit stones in each storage bag. It seems they think it's too little, not letting me register. Bribing in public? Wei Qianqiu and Yun Peng's faces twitched. The former asked with difficulty, Why did you give them spirit stones? Don't tell me you want to barge in without a referral from another chamber of commerce. Yu Qianqiu blinked for a moment. Do I really need a referral from another chamber of commerce to register? This is the rule of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, mainly to prevent people with unknown origins from causing trouble. Don't you know? Wei Chuanqiu weakly raised his hand to his forehead. The sharp light in Yun Peng's eyes receded, his eyelids drooping slightly as he maintained his silence. Yu Qianqiu turned around to look at the open doors, muttering under his breath. Damn it! There's such a lousy rule, why haven't I heard of it before? Who should I look for a referral? Pondering for a moment, his eyes lit up, asking, Bat King Wei, Wang Gutong should have a business here, right? Do you know where it is? Wei Chuanqiu frowned, asking suspiciously, The immortal world's #1 chamber of commerce, Wang Gutong? Are you familiar with Wang Gutong? For a referral like this, if one doesn't have a good understanding of the other party's background, one wouldn't help. It might even be risky. Without old man Wan Bo's approval, no one would dare to help Wang Gutong. Are you sure Wang Gutong is useful? I'll give it a try. Yu Qianqiu looked around, asking, Which mountain is Wang Gutong on? At this time, Yun Peng, who had been silent all this time, suddenly pointed to a mountain not far away. Over there. Yu Qianqiu took the opportunity to look at the gray buildings on the opposite side of the mountain. Nodding his head, he put away the 2 storage bags in his hands and flew off in a flicker. Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng exchanged a glance, then followed after Yu Qianqiu. Both of them were curious whether Yu Qianqiu was really that capable, choosing the #1 sect in the immortal world, Wang Gutong, out of all people. The 3 of them landed in front of the gray hall on the opposite side. This place was obviously livelier than the Commerce Alliance's area, with people walking in and out of the hall. Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng followed behind Yu Qianqiu. More importantly, the 2 of them standing together was too eye-catching, immediately attracting the attention of many people. Elder Wan Gai, who was sitting behind the curtains in the side hall, stood up and walked out in large strides. From afar, he cupped his fists towards Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng. So it's the Green-Winged Bat King and White Cloud Mountain Chieftain. Sorry for the disrespect. These 2 people's names did have some influence in the immortal world. Everyone in the hall stopped to look at them. Wei Chuanqiu chuckled. So it's Guya. Are you in charge of this place now? Both sides were obviously familiar with each other. I'm ashamed. I'm indebted to the sect master's kindness. Wang Yi said a few polite words. His gaze fell on Yu Qianqiu, who was flanking Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng. He cupped his fists in a somewhat surprised manner and said, Honored sir looks very unfamiliar. May I know who you are? Chapter 859. He clearly misunderstood. Not being able to see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was one reason, but the most important reason was that Yu Qianqiu had Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng following behind him. These 2 followers were more powerful, and ordinary people couldn't afford to use them. I'm no expert. Yu Qianqiu smiled self-deprecatingly and cupped his hands. I'm Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu. Wang Gai was startled. He felt that the name sounded familiar, so he asked tentatively, You're the Yu Qianqiu who participated in the gathering of the God Ruin Realm? Yu Qianqiu was also startled by him. He calmed himself down and said, I did participate in the gathering of the God Ruin Realm. Is there a problem? He thought that Wan Ling and the others wouldn't spread the news that he was an immortal emperor's secret agent everywhere. He's Yu Qianqiu. So it's him. Whispers immediately came from the hall, and everyone's eyes were focused on Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu looked around blankly, as if he didn't think that he had already become so famous. Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng looked at each other speechlessly. They didn't know where Yu Qianqiu came from. How could so many people know him? This didn't match the identity of a spirit-severing rogue cultivator. The 2 of them didn't know that the people in the hall were even more confused about them. Why would early immortal Emperor Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng hang out with a mere spirit-severing rogue cultivator? After confirming that the person in front of him was indeed Yu Qianqiu, Wang Gai immediately looked at him in a new light. He didn't know what was going on between Yu Qianqiu and Wang Gutong, but he heard about Wan Ling holding Yu Qianqiu's hand in public. Wan Ling was deeply doted on by Wan Buosheng. Wan Gui had to give face to Wan Ling's lover. He immediately cupped his hands towards the three of them and said, "It's rare for three esteemed guests to come. Please come in." The three of them didn't stand on ceremony and followed him to the room on the left of the hall. After sitting down, Wan Gui asked with a smile, "I don't want to make a deal, I just have a request. I want to register a merchant association with the Alliance, but I need to be recommended by another merchant association. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble your merchant association to be my referral. I want to register a Chamber of Commerce in the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, but I need a referral from another Chamber of Commerce. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble your Chamber of Commerce to be my referral." The smile on Wan Gui's face froze for a moment. Then he laughed it off and said perfunctorily, "I can't make the decision on this. This matter must be approved by our sect leader." Yu Qianqiu didn't have the time to beat around the bush with him. There was a big mess waiting for the Chamber of Commerce to be established, so he bluntly said, "I don't need you to make the decision. Please send a message to your Chamber of Commerce's sect master. He will tell you what to do." Yu Qianqiu didn't have the time to beat around the bush. There was a big mess waiting for the establishment of the Merchant Association, so he said bluntly, "You don't need to make a decision. Please send a message to the master of your Merchant Association. He will tell you what to do." Wang Gui couldn't keep his smile. Even Wan Ling wouldn't talk to an elder like him. If it weren't for Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng sitting here, he would have sent them away. The faint smile on Yu Qianqiu's face didn't diminish. He stood up and slowly walked in front of Wan Gui. He said word by word, "I don't want to have any conflict with you, but I don't have time to beat around the bush. I advise you to pass on my words to Wan Buosheng as soon as possible. He naturally knows what to do. If you delay things, I'm afraid Wan Buosheng won't forgive you." Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng looked at each other. They didn't know what was wrong with Yu Qianqiu. He actually dared to say such words. However, to their surprise, Yu Qianqiu's body actually faintly emanated the aura of a superior. He was like a completely different person compared to before. Insolent. Wan Gui's hair and beard stood on end as he barked. "The name of our Merchant Association's master is not something you can call out." Yu Qianqiu's gaze turned cold. He casually took out the profound purple token and raised it up. "My words have offended you, Elder Wan. Please quell your anger. Since Elder Wan is unwilling to help me contact your Merchant Association's master, then please help me pass my words to Wan Ling. When she gave me this token, she said that I can use this token to look for her if I need anything." Wang Gui suppressed his anger the moment he saw the token. This token represented Wan Gutong's reputation. It couldn't be easily damaged. He snatched the token from Wan Gui's hand, exasperated. "Wait a moment." He turned around and left. Wei Chuanxiu stood up and circled around Yu Qianqiu twice. Then he clicked his tongue and said, "Where did you come from? A profound zither token shouldn't be something that someone of your cultivation level can obtain, right?" "How would I know? Someone forcefully gave it to me." Yu Qianqiu shrugged innocently. "Don't give me that." Wei Chuanxiu rolled his eyes. "Tell me honestly, who is the Wan Ling who gave you the token? She must be a woman, right?" Yun Peng at the side chimed in. "I heard she's Wan Buosheng's precious granddaughter. Wan Buosheng dotes on her a lot. She wasn't born before you went into seclusion." Wei Chuanqiu made a long, "oh" sound, an ambiguous smile hanging on his face. "Not bad, brat. You actually got together with Wan Buosheng's precious granddaughter. Amazing. Admirable. What kind of person do you take me for?" Yu Qianqiu snorted disdainfully. Not long after the two of them messed around, Wang Gui hurried in, slightly fearful as he bowed to Yu Qianqiu. "I've offended you just now. Please forgive me. The sect leader has personally instructed me to do my best to cooperate with you." Before this, he had thought that Yu Qianqiu was someone who relied on Wan Ling to live off a woman. After contacting Wan Ling, he relayed Yu Qianqiu's words to her, and Wan Ling nervously asked him to wait for a moment. What surprised Wang Gui was that not long after, Wan Buosheng personally contacted him, warning him in an unusually serious tone. "Promise him, try not to provoke him in the future. This person's background is very deep." Wan Bushing only gave him such a short sentence, but Wan Gui immediately sensed something unusual. Wan Gutong was already the #1 chamber of commerce in the immortal world. And from Wan Bushing's mouth, how could it be simple? In addition to Yu Qianqiu's previous words and actions, Wan Gui was a little shocked, faintly suspecting that Yu Qianqiu had some connection with the immortal palace. Otherwise, how could Wan Bushing treat him so cautiously? But thinking about it, it didn't seem right. The Chamber of Commerce Alliance was originally controlled by the immortal palace. If Yu Qianqiu was from the immortal palace, why would he need Wan Gutong's recommendation? No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out the reason. But he knew that this Yu Qianqiu was not someone he could afford to provoke. No wonder that Yu Qianqiu said that if he delayed things, Wan Bushing would not forgive him. Suspicion flashed across Wei Chuanxiu and Yin Peng's eyes. The change in Wan Gui's attitude was too big. Yu Qianqiu smiled as he received the token from Wan Gui. There's no time to lose. Then I'll have to trouble Elder Wan to accompany me to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. I dare not, please. Wan Gui made an inviting gesture. The group of 4 immediately left the Great Hall, flying directly to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. Landing outside the Great Hall, Wan Gui walked briskly to the Great Hall entrance, taking out the Wan Gutong Chamber of Commerce Alliance's token for the 2 guards to verify. The 2 guards looked at Yu Qianqiu in surprise, cursing him inwardly for being crazy. Since he could invite Wan Gutong as a referral, why was he still spouting nonsense? The 4 of them were immediately let in. After entering the Great Hall, Wan Gui had the 3 of them wait for a moment, while he himself held the Wan Gutong Chamber of Commerce Alliance's token, heading to the back hall without any obstructions. No one knew what Wan Gui did, but it took some time before he brought 2 golden-robed old men with him. Seeing Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng, the 2 of them cupped their fists in greeting, exchanging a few words of greeting. It was obvious they knew each other. One of them looked at Yu Qianqiu. You're Yu Qianqiu. You want to register a chamber of commerce? That's right. Yu Qianqiu replied in a tone that was neither haughty nor humble. The 2 golden-robed old men exchanged a glance. Then one of them asked with an expressionless face, do you want to register a chamber of commerce that deals in a single business, or multiple businesses? Register as a multi-business merchant association, Yu Qianqiu said. The other party answered without hesitation, 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones. Yu Qianqiu knew he couldn't be stingy with this amount of money. Even though his heart ached, he still took out the 2 storage bracelets and handed them to the other party. That person counted the items carefully, then nodded to the other person. Not bad. Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng exchanged a speechless look. This Yu Qianqiu looked like he only had a broken storage pouch hanging on his waist. They didn't expect him to be so rich. Wan Gui's expression tightened. 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones was not something an average soul formation rogue cultivator could take out. This person's background was indeed not simple. Little did Wan Gui know that this amount of money came from their eternal trade association. The other golden-robed old man immediately inquired the name of the Chamber of Commerce, as well as the name of the Chamber of Commerce's president-cum-sec chief. Yu Qianqiu straightened his back. A sharp light flickered in his eyes as he replied in a sonorous voice. The World Commerce Chamber. Yu Qianqiu. His voice reverberated in the Great Hall. Everyone present could hear the strangeness in his voice, but none of them thought too much about it. This kind of situation was very common. Which person who came to register a chamber of commerce did not have high expectations for the chamber of commerce they registered with. The 2 golden-robed old men each held a jade archive in their hands and put it away after they were done. One of them announced, the World Commerce Chamber's president-cum-sec chief, Yu Qianqiu, has completed the registration. The news will be announced to the whole immortal world tomorrow. With that said, the 2 golden-robed old men turned around and returned to the back hall. Wan Gui cupped his fists at Yu Qianqiu, congratulating him. Congratulations, Sec Chief Yu. Congratulations to the World Commerce Chamber for establishing a branch in the immortal world. Yu Qianqiu blinked for a second, then asked suspiciously, the registration is completed just like that? Wan Gui smiled. Yes, the registration is completed. Just like that, They charged me 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones? Yu Qianqiu's face twitched uncontrollably. Wang Gui smiled wryly, thinking to himself, who would dare to reason with the immortal palace? He waved his hand, indicating that there was nothing to do here, and they could not stay any longer. The group of four exited the Chamber of Commerce Chamber's Great Hall, walking to the hillside outside. The sun was shining brightly outside. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his face with both hands, but the pained expression on his face could not be erased. Wei Chuanqiu seemed to have regained his senses, staring at Yu Qianqiu with a cold sneer. Feeling heartache, right? But you're really rich, using 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones to buy the position of sect chief, really extravagant. Hehe, you're the only sect chief in the whole World Commerce Chamber, interesting. Chapter 860. Who says I'm a lone sect leader? Yu Qianqiu looked at Wei Chuanqiu indifferently, his eyes narrowed as he said slowly, "Don't I still have you?" Wei Chuanqiu was rendered speechless. Noticing that Yun Peng and Wan Gai were looking at him suspiciously, Wei Chuanqiu straightened his face. "Yu Qianqiu, don't drag that world commerce of yours into my head. I have no interest in your rundown world commerce that has nothing." Yu Qianqiu tilted his head to avoid the dazzling sunlight. Looking at the streams of light rising and falling in the sky, he slowly said, "Everything starts from nothing. What should have will eventually have. It's time for a lone sect leader, like me, to recruit some subordinates." As he was speaking, his eyes suddenly narrowed, looking at the buildings on the surrounding hills, asking in astonishment, "Other merchant houses have their own hills here. Where is my territory?" Everyone exchanged a glance. Then Wan Gui said as if it was a matter of course, "Naturally you have to buy it." "You have to buy it? Didn't you pay 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones just now?" Yu Qianqiu exclaimed in shock. "It's fine if you don't have to spend money," Wei Chuanqiu said with a mocking smile. "There is another method that the World Commerce Alliance allows. If you fancy a house's territory, you can use your name as the World Commerce House's sect leader to issue a challenge to that house's sect leader. According to the World Commerce Alliance's rules, both houses' sect leaders are allowed to challenge each other. As long as you win against the other house's sect leader, the other house has to give up their hill to you. Then you don't have to spend a single spirit stone. This works." Yu Qianqiu was rendered speechless for a moment, then asked with a lack of confidence, "How many spirit stones does it cost to buy a hill?" He admitted that he didn't have the ability to challenge other houses' sect leaders. Thus he didn't count on saving money. Wei Chuanqiu was the first to answer, decisively raising a finger, 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones. If you're not willing to pay this amount, and don't want to challenge other houses' sect leaders, then learn from them. As he spoke, he pointed at the huge plaza surrounded by mountains. There were countless stalls and vendors there. The meaning behind his words was obvious. He wanted Yu Qianqiu to learn from them and set up stalls there. Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched. He gritted his teeth and said, "This old man is now the Grand Sect Master of the World Chamber of Commerce. How can I do something like setting up a stall? I think I'll leave this matter to you. I'll prepare the things to sell for you. There's no need for you to worry." Yunpeng and Wang Gui stared at Wei Chuanqiu at the same time. The latter's smile froze on his face. After a long while he said, "What? Why? Why not?" "Because you promised to help me." Yu Qianqiu spoke with an indifferent expression. "If you don't want to set up a stall, I won't force you. Lend me 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones first, I'll repay you later." 10 billion? Wei Chuanqiu was dumbfounded. "I don't see any hope of a lone sect master like you making money. What's the difference between lending you 10 billion spirit stones and throwing it away? I don't even have enough spirit stones for my own use. I can consider giving you 1 or 200 million spirit stones for free. 10 billion is out of the question." Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. He had said it casually, but from the other side's words, it seemed like he could really take out 10 billion spirit stones. He coughed lightly. "For an expert like you, taking out 10 or 20 billion spirit stones shouldn't be a problem. As for my ability to repay you, you don't need to worry about it. Think about it. I can take out 50 billion spirit stones to register the World Chamber of Commerce. Do you think I'll be short of your 10 billion? Wei Chuanqiu shook his head like a rattle drum, refusing. Since you're so rich, why are you thinking about me? I haven't had any income for many years, living off my savings. If you want to borrow money, find someone else. For example, their Wang Gutong is very rich. Don't you have a close relationship with them? His finger pointed at Wang Yi. Wang Gai lowered his head and pretended he didn't hear anything, pretending he didn't know anything. This matter has nothing to do with me. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him. He wouldn't do something like reaching out to Wang Gutong for money again. As the saying goes, even a rabbit will bite when it's cornered. He couldn't keep trying to take advantage of the other party. If he pushed the other party into a corner, he would be the one in trouble. This kind of stupid thing couldn't be done. Way back, King, you promised to help me. Yu Qianqiu emphasized this point once again. Wei Chuanqiu immediately protested. It's true that I promised to help you, but I can't possibly take out my savings to play with you. Look at what you've done. You actually spent 50 billion to buy a lone sect leader. Your brain. I'm not going to play along with you. And I can't afford to, because I'm not as extravagant as you. Wang Gai was pondering the relationship between Wei Chuanqiu, Wang Gai, and Yu Qianqiu, whereas Yin Peng was silently observing from the side. He too was pondering what was going on between Wei Chuanqiu and Yu Qianqiu. A person who could casually take out 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones and still dared to pester Wei Chuanqiu endlessly. No one would take him as an ordinary soul formation rogue cultivator. Lend me 10 billion. I'll return you 15 billion a year later. Yu Qianqiu stated nonchalantly. Yin Peng and Wang Gai exchanged a surprised glance. This interest was really high. A little too high. I don't. Wei Chuanqiu's refusal was stuck in his throat. The mustache above his lips curled up, and a hint of melancholy flickered in his eyes as he asked in a doubtful tone. Are you sure you'll return me 15 billion a year later, if I lend you 10 billion? This high profit made him feel conflicted. Yu Qianqiu smiled as he untied the storage bag at his waist, handing it over to Wei Chuanqiu. I won't force you. Take a look at the things inside before you decide if you want to lend them to me. Wei Chuanqiu received the storage bag suspiciously, and after a brief inspection, his eyes widened in shock as he swiftly took inventory of the things inside. There was a big pile of immortal herbs inside. Each one of them was worth 100 million spirit stones. There were at least 100 billion inside the storage bag. Wei Chuanqiu swallowed with difficulty, raising his head. These. Yu Qianqiu immediately waved his hand, cutting Wei Chuanqiu off, pulling the storage bag back with a smile. It's enough that you've seen it, don't spout nonsense. I only have one question for you. Are you going to lend it to me or not? In fact, he could easily take out some of these immortal herbs to exchange for 10 billion spirit stones. But he didn't want to reveal the fact that he had a large amount of immortal herbs in his possession. The reason why he registered the world commerce firm in the immortal world was similar to money laundering. He needed a platform to launder his name. The world commerce firm was doing business normally, so it was normal for it to have immortal herbs for sale. No one could say anything about it. It wasn't that he didn't have any other way besides borrowing money from Wei Chuanqiu. But he needed an expert by his side to protect and escort him. Borrowing 10 billion spirit stones for a year, and paying 5 billion spirit stones in interest, it wasn't like he had too much money to spend. The key was to bind his interests with Wei Chuanqiu, and pull him onto the pirate ship together. Relying on words and threats wasn't a long-term solution. I'll lend it to you. Wei Chuanqiu agreed in an unusually decisive manner, and quickly took out a storage bracelet. Before handing it over to Yu Qianqiu, he didn't forget to warn him. I'll say the ugly words first. If you dare to lie to me, don't blame me for falling out with you. Yin Peng and Wang Gai looked at each other, not knowing why Wei Chuanqiu's attitude had changed so completely, but it was definitely related to what Yu Qianqiu had shown him. It was also because of this that the items in the storage bracelet were very attractive to the two of them. But looking at Yu Qianqiu's intentions, it seemed like he didn't want a third party to know about it. So the two of them could only suppress their curiosity. My character is the best guarantee. Yu Qianqiu took the storage bracelet and counted it as he praised himself. The number wasn't bad. There wasn't a piece more or less. He wore the storage bracelet on his wrist in satisfaction, his eyes already sweeping across the surrounding mountains, as if he was choosing a mountain. However, after a while he frowned. He discovered that all the places he could see were occupied by people. This area of mountains surrounded the square. It should be the most prosperous area. His gaze paused for a moment when it landed on Wan Gutong's mountain peak. Then he pointed in a circle and said, "Are the sects that occupy this mountain peak all the big sects in the immortal world?" "That's right. The top-ranked sects in the immortal world are all gathered in this area. The further you go, the weaker the sects become. For example, the world commerce firm that you registered can't even be considered a beginner. I'm afraid it can only be in the outermost area. However, if you become strong enough in the future, you'll have a chance to stand at the front," Wei Chuanxiu explained seriously. There was no other way. He had already invested a large sum of money, so he naturally hoped that Yu Qianqiu could earn a lot of money as soon as possible, and then return it to him, allowing him to make a fortune as well. "Looks like I can only find a mountain to make do with first, and raise the banner of the world commerce firm here. Let's go. Let's go pick a place." Yu Qianqiu called out to Wei Bat King and left, while the other two followed on their own initiative. There was no dense cloud covering the sky inside Hallucination Immortal City. It was clear that this place was also covered by a large array. Although it was difficult to spy on the situation below from high up in the sky, it was different from the protective array that Yu Qianqiu had seen in the human world. This place could be entered and exited at will, without any obstacles. The group of four flew around the periphery of Hallucination Immortal City. There were many empty mountains at the periphery of the large array, but none of them satisfied Yu Qianqiu. However, places with good mountains and water had already been picked by others. In the end, they had no choice but to pick a high mountain with a waterfall. Once they landed, a golden-robed man immediately appeared and greeted them warmly. His attitude was clearly different from the other people from the Immortal Palace. After Wei Chuanqiu's secret introduction, Yu Qianqiu understood that there was actually a golden-robed man squatting on every empty mountain in Hallucination Immortal City. These people were mostly people who didn't have much power in the Immortal Palace, so it seemed like they were exiled here. They could only return after selling the mountain and completing the mission. Otherwise, they would have to keep squatting on the mountain. Therefore, to these people, people like Yu Qianqiu who picked the mountain was their savior. Since they had already decided to buy it, and there was no price to negotiate, Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything. He simply and straightforwardly made a deal with the golden-robed man, buying this high mountain with a waterfall as the territory for the world commerce firm to open. Chapter 861. This mountain couldn't be considered very tall in the hallucinatory Immortal City, but compared to the surrounding mountains, it was still relatively tall. Standing at the top of the mountain, one could clearly see the situation of the surrounding mountains. However, there were very few trees on the entire mountain, and not a single tree could be seen. Large chunks of rocks were exposed. Looking around, the barren mountain seemed a little out of the ordinary. The only interesting thing was that there were tens of clear springs and ponds at the top of the mountain. The water converged into one, forming a waterfall on one side of the steep slope. Although the mountain was barren, it was still a bit interesting. Yu Qianqiu looked around with high spirits. Although the territory wasn't big, at least he had his own territory in the immortal world, and he wouldn't be homeless in the immortal world. After building it a little, and pulling the people from the mortal world up, this would be everyone's starting point in the immortal world. "Why did you choose this mountain?" "I think that mountain is pretty good," Wei Chuanqiu muttered and pointed into the distance. It was a lush and green mountain with towering ancient trees. Not only was it pleasing to the eye, it was also filled with vitality. Yu Qianqiu lowered his head and looked at the 6 to 7 meter diameter pool beside his feet. There was actually a school of small fish swimming around in it. He didn't know how they got to the top of this mountain. He pointed and a fist-sized crystal ball of water floated up from the pool. Inside it was a frightened and uneasy fish that was scurrying around. Bat King Wei, you don't understand. Doing business is all about feng shui. A place with water represents fortune. Especially this running water. It represents an unending stream of fortune. If we occupy this mountain, we will definitely be rolling in money in the future. Do you believe it? Yu Qianqiu said with a smile. The water ball landed in his palm, and the small fish inside became more and more anxious. Every time its head bumped against the water ball, it would create a ripple. Unfortunately, it was unable to break through the circular water screen. What does feng shui mean? Wei Chuanqiu was stunned. He looked at the other two with a questioning gaze. Yin Peng and Wan Gai also looked at each other, their faces full of doubt. It seemed like they had never heard of this before. Feng shui is the meaning of luck. Those who have feng shui will be able to do everything smoothly. This is a very profound spell, and I only know a little about it. Yu Qianqiu casually bluffed. It was really difficult for him to explain anything. The water ball in his hand was thrown back into the pool, and it quietly melted into the water. The small fish scurried around for a while before hiding in the cracks of the rocks at the bottom of the pool, not daring to come out. The three of them looked at each other, feeling a little confused by what they were hearing. Wei Chuanqiu knew that Yu Qianqiu had some incredible tricks up his sleeves. Even though she didn't completely believe him, she still believed him a little. She probed. Are you saying that as long as we occupy this mountain, we will be able to bring fortune? Of course, Yu Qianqiu's eyes flashed, and he said indifferently, but it still needs to be modified by me. After saying that, he leaped into the air and carefully looked at the gushing waterfall, preparing to make good use of it. The few of them didn't know what he was looking at, so they also came to take a look. After looking for a long time, they couldn't see anything. However, they saw that Yu Qianqiu had leaped to the front of the waterfall. He stretched out both of his palms from his sleeves and pressed them against the waterfall, causing the water to splash everywhere. No one knew what he was doing. After a while, the few of them finally saw some clues. They found that Yu Qianqiu was adjusting the mountain behind the waterfall. As the mountain changed, the waterfall that was flowing straight down stirred up large patches of white water. After a while, they saw that the water had stirred up a big Tian character. After making this character, Yu Qianqiu grasped the right amount. The speed at which his palms rose and fell increased, and a down character appeared once again. Not long after, the four huge words World Chamber of Commerce stood erect on the slightly slanted mountain, with an awe-inspiring aura. Each word emitted a hua-hua sound of surging water. The different pitches produced by the four words seemed to be announcing to everyone that this was the World Chamber of Commerce. In an instant, the entire mountain became extraordinary. Wei Chuanqiu and the others looked at each other speechlessly. They found that after Yu Qianqiu's actions, this mountain really did have a bit of a treasure land of feng shui. Yu Qianqiu also flew into the air to look at it from all different angles. The corner of his mouth hooked into a smile. It seemed that he quite liked his masterpiece. When the Chamber of Commerce Alliance announced the newly established World Chamber of Commerce, it didn't attract much attention in the immortal world. What really made people remember this Chamber of Commerce was the mountain that the World Chamber of Commerce had transformed. First, some passers-by discovered it by chance. Then it spread from 1 to 10, and from 10 to 100. In the end, everyone knew about it. The four characters World Chamber of Commerce, formed by the water, immediately became a spectacle in the illusory immortal city. Every day, many people would come to watch. There were even many people who came from afar after hearing about it. They all marveled at this simple yet extraordinary masterpiece. There was no doubt that no matter how strong this newly established World Chamber of Commerce was, this masterpiece alone was enough to let everyone know that there was such a World Chamber of Commerce in the immortal world. It was a simple idea, but like a stroke of genius, it instantly made the World Chamber of Commerce's name known in the immortal world. Many small chambers of commerce even lamented why they didn't think of this in the first place. This was such a good opportunity to make their own Chamber of Commerce famous. Everyone sighed at themselves for letting go of such a good piece of territory. It should be known that many small chambers of commerce have been operating for many years, but were still unable to make their Chamber of Commerce famous. For example, the tiny Four Links Chamber of Commerce had been operating in the immortal world for many years. It was even the painstaking efforts of several generations of people in the immortal world. Yet, when they announced their name, most people in the immortal world didn't know of the existence of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. They didn't even know if they existed, so why would they do business with them? When doing business, the fame of the Chamber of Commerce often represented the amount of profit. There was no doubt about this. Everyone understood this. Look at the World Chamber of Commerce. They didn't even know when they would open for business, but their Chamber of Commerce was already famous. The reason was none other than the contribution of those few characters on the mountain. Those few characters were worth countless years of blood and sweat. It was truly infuriating to compare oneself to others. Some people wanted nothing more than to bang their heads against the wall and die. The mountain was still the same mountain. It just had an owner, and a few more characters on the mountain. Other than that, there were no other changes. There weren't even the most basic buildings. It was clear that the World Chamber of Commerce hadn't opened yet. Even so, Wei Chuanxiu had seen the changes in the past few days. They hadn't even started doing business, but their popularity was already booming. Once they opened for business, business would definitely not go wrong. The shifty-eyed Wei Chuanxiu had been wandering around the mountain with his hands behind his back for the past few days. He looked like he was patrolling the mountain. Yu Qianqiu didn't make him do hard labor, but he enjoyed it. He especially liked to wander around the side of the mountain with the characters. It was as if he wanted to tell everyone who came to watch that he was the owner of this mountain. It felt really good to receive the envious gazes of so many people. It seemed like this was the first time he had found this feeling after living for so many years. Although he knew that the owner of this mountain was Yu Qianqiu, he felt that he had spent 10 billion to have this popular territory appear. His contribution was definitely not small. It was only right for him to enjoy this bit of glory. He now had no doubts about Yu Qianqiu's Feng Shui treasure land. He had just occupied this territory, and it immediately became a treasure land. The Feng Shui was too good. He would definitely be able to make money in the future. However, the more he thought about it, the more conflicted he became. If business was booming in the immortal world, then he would be able to make a fortune. However, he would only receive 5 billion for the money he spent. Wasn't that too little? Wei Chuanqiu's beady eyes darted around, looking at Yu Qianqiu, who was also looking around the mountain. Yu Qianqiu had been thinking about how to use the current location to build this mountain, especially the dozens of clear springs and ponds. It would be a waste not to use them. Wang Ge had long returned to Wangutong. He had his own matters and couldn't always accompany them. Yun Peng, on the other hand, found a place to sit cross-legged on the mountain. He hadn't moved for the past few days, but he was constantly paying attention to Wei Chuanxiu's movements. Based on his understanding of Wei Chuanxiu, Yun Peng could vaguely guess that Wei Chuanxiu was up to no good. Yu Qianqiu, when do you plan to start work on this mountain? Wei Chuanxiu had slipped behind Yu Qianqiu without him noticing, asking with a smile. His concern was obvious on his face. Yu Qianqiu jumped on top of a large rock and looked around the mountain again. His gaze gradually became resolute, as if he had made up his mind. He nodded slowly. I'll find people to start work in the next few days. Hee, that's good, that's good. Such a good Feng Shui treasure land is really a waste. Cough cough. That. Wei Chuanqiu's smile suddenly became serious. She said solemnly, it will definitely cost a lot of money to make the whole mountain look good. Have you prepared the money? Yu Qianqiu looked at him in surprise. Since when did Wei Chuanqiu become so concerned about him? He couldn't figure it out. Money is dead, but people are alive. Can a living person be stumped by money? Don't worry. I will think of a way. AI. It's not that I want to scold you, but you're really too much. Didn't I promise to help you? Why do you have to think of other ways to help me? Wei Chuanqiu also jumped on top of the large rock, standing beside Yu Qianqiu. He looked around. If we really want to build this mountain to look good, I'm guessing we'll need to spend several 100 million divine-grade spirit stones. If it's not convenient for you, I can lend you some 1 billion more. Is that enough? Yu Qianqiu blinked for a second, looking at Wei Chuanqiu from head to toe with disbelief. It was as if he had heard something out of the Arabian Nights. He couldn't tell if he had heard wrong. Picking his ears, he asked suspiciously, "Did you just say you want to lend me another 1,000,000,000 divine-grade spirit stones?" Chapter 862. Wei Chuanqiu waved his hand to stop him. "Based on our relationship, you're treating me like an outsider. How about this?" Before he finished speaking, he secretly glanced at Yun Peng, who was sitting cross-legged not far away, and then transmitted his voice in a low voice. "I estimate that the immortal herbs in your storage bag are worth hundreds of billions. I gave you 10 billion before, and now I'll give you another billion. It's almost a tenth of the price of the immortal herbs in your hands. How about this? You don't have to return the money in a hurry. Saving more money to develop the world commerce is the right way. Just let me take 10% of the world commerce's shares. I don't want any more. What do you think? If you agree, I'll give you another billion immediately." Yu Qianqiu leaned back slightly and sized him up. He could tell that this old bat was also a fellow who only cared about money. He coughed and said, "It's not appropriate to always take out your own capital. Forget it, I'll think of another way." "Don't." Wei Chuanqiu's eyes widened. He stopped transmitting his voice and pretended to be angry. "Based on our relationship, there's no point in treating me like an outsider. Damn it. You were so stubborn when I wanted to borrow money from you. Now you're not treating me like an outsider." Yu Qianqiu shook his head. "I don't want to treat you like an outsider either. But you can see that my cultivation is shallow. If the world commerce is destroyed one day, you'll lose everything. I really don't want to harm you. Don't worry. Whoever wants to destroy the world commerce's business will have to go through me first." Wei Chuanqiu patted his chest and guaranteed righteously. Then, he took out a storage bracelet that he had prepared before coming and stuffed it into Yu Qianqiu's hand. He said solemnly, "This is 1 billion. It's settled." Yun Peng, who had been staring at them, shook his head slightly and closed his eyes slowly. Yu Qianqiu looked at the bracelet in his hand and raised his brows. "This is not impossible. Old bat, I'll say the ugly words first. No matter how much money you invest, without my permission, you are not allowed to interfere with the world commerce's business. If you agree, then it's fine. If you don't, you can take the money back." This, Wei Chuanqiu hesitated for a moment. If he didn't care about anything, wouldn't he have the right to care after spending more than 10 billion? This was not a small amount of money. "Don't worry. I won't leave you out once we earn money. Just wait for your share," Yu Qianqiu added. If he didn't want to tie them down with benefits, he wouldn't want any outsiders to participate in World Chamber of Commerce's business. Wei Chuanqiu gritted her teeth and made up her mind. "I believe you. It's settled then." Upon hearing this, Yu Qianqiu immediately put away the storage bracelet and laughed. "Bat King Wei, you can rest assured. I guarantee that the money you get will be more than enough." Once the World Commerce Association became famous, many people naturally began to pay attention to who the sect master of the World Commerce Association was. On the wide square surrounded by mountains, it wasn't wrong to say that there were too many people and too many mouths. These days, the person who wasted the most of their mouths was the sect master of the world commerce. Once 3 to 5 people met, they immediately started exchanging pointers. Someone asked the moment they met, "Have you heard? The sect master of the World Commerce Association is that Yu Qianqiu who killed all the disciples of Heartless Palace in the ruins of God." Another person immediately shook his head. "That's really strange. How could a mere soul formation stage loose cultivator take out 50 billion to register the World Commerce Association?" Someone at the side immediately interrupted. "He's not an ordinary soul formation stage expert. It's said that his background is very deep. I personally saw White Cloud Mountain Lord Yun Peng become his mount. Go and take a look. Green Wingbat King and White Cloud Mountain Lord are following behind him. He has 2 early-stage Immortal Emperor experts as his subordinates. Have you seen a soul formation loose cultivator like this?" In just a few days, the news of White Cloud Mountain Lord Yun Peng becoming Yu Qianqiu's mount had also spread like wildfire in the immortal world. For a time, countless people were guessing and investigating Yu Qianqiu's background. This Yu Qianqiu's first appearance was related to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. However, after investigating the Four Links Chamber of Commerce, there was no way to investigate further. There was no other reason than that the current Four Links Chamber of Commerce was no longer something that ordinary people could afford to offend. The Four Links Chamber of Commerce had also become the focus of the entire immortal world. Immortal Palace External Affairs Great Commander Wu Xiong had taken a fancy to the daughter of Four Links Chamber of Commerce's President Mu Bing. After discussion and agreement between both parties, Great Commander Wu Xiong had already sent betrothal gifts. Both parties had set a wedding date for 3 months later. It was said that this marriage was formed because of the love at first sight between the male and female protagonists at the ruins of God Realm. Once this news was announced, the status of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce in the immortal world could no longer be described as rising with the tide. It was more appropriate to describe it as soaring. Countless loose cultivators and loose immortals trampled through the doors of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce, begging to join it. Many sects, big and small, even took the initiative to deliver business to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. Moreover, they were the kind that would rather suffer losses than take the initiative to give up profits. Some even made it clear that they wanted the Four Links Chamber of Commerce to make a fortune. Everyone was well aware of why this was the case. It was nothing more than a show of goodwill towards Wu Xiong, hoping to use this opportunity to improve their relationship. Under these circumstances, who would dare to rashly approach the Four Links Chamber of Commerce to inquire about Yu Qianqiu's information? Even if a few people of considerable status tried to inquire about it, the Four Links Chamber of Commerce would refuse to answer any of their questions. They were unwilling to divulge any information about Yu Qianqiu's origins. In truth, no one in the Four Links Chamber of Commerce knew of Yu Qianqiu's origins. It was only because of a small misunderstanding during a recruitment that they mistakenly recruited Yu Qianqiu. It was also because of this misunderstanding that the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's fate underwent an earth-shattering change. If it wasn't for Yu Qianqiu raising his hand and shouting, the Four Links Chamber of Commerce would not have had the opportunity to organize enough people to go to the Divine Ruin Realm. They would also not have met Wu Xiong, and naturally, the Four Links Chamber of Commerce would not exist today. When Yu Qianqiu learned of this news, he was sitting in the inner room of the hallucinatory Immortal City's everlasting Great Hall, chatting with Wang Gei. His main purpose was to ask Wang Gei to help him find people to build his territory. At the same time, he also learned from Wang Gei that Mu Tianjiao and Wu Xiong were going to marry. The two of them fell in love at first sight. Yu Qianqiu was stunned when he heard this. As the main character who had the chance to have an ambiguous relationship with Mu Tianjiao, he really did not see any signs of love at first sight between Wu Xiong and Mu Tianjiao. So no matter how he thought about it, he could not understand how these two people with such a huge disparity in status could get together. Wang Gei, who was sitting next to him, was also stunned when he saw his reaction. Then he suddenly came to a realization. He clapped his hands and laughed, saying, "That's right. I heard that your relationship with eldest Miss Mu is not bad. You even fought side by side in the Divine Ruins realm. I believe your relationship is not shallow. Now that eldest Miss Mu is about to marry Great Commander Wu Xiong, this relationship will definitely be of help to the World Chamber of Commerce in the future." "Haha, I actually hope so." Yu Qianqiu smiled politely, but he was a little worried in his stomach. Back then, Mu Tianjiao had abandoned her pride as a woman to confess her love to him, but he had rejected her. He did not know if she would bear a grudge against him. He had always been suspicious of a woman's tolerance in this aspect. If Mu Tianjiao wanted to show him some face and got married to Wu Xiong, then it would be troublesome. I hope that's not the case. Curse those two next door, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong. These two fellows are really useless. They made the first move and didn't even get that girl, causing this daddy here to be on tenterhooks. I'll curse you too when I get the chance. Yu Qianqiu thought to himself. The two of them chatted for a while longer before Yu Qianqiu bid farewell to Wang Gei. Exiting the Everlasting Connection branch's main hall, he left the hallucinatory immortal city in a low-profile manner and disappeared after finding a more secluded place. The underground world opened up by the Eastern Holy Lands had already become the place where the various feudal lords squatted for a long period of time. Most of them had thrown the family matters to their disciples. After getting their share of the immortal world's divine-grade spirit stones, the little bit of money in the mortal world was nothing to them. Who had the mood to fight over a few small amounts of money in the mortal world? All of them looked forward to the good days that Yu Qianqiu described to them in the immortal world. As a result, all of them took the initiative to guard the transmission array below the Holy Palace, to prevent it from being destroyed. One must know that this transmission array was the only link to the immortal world in everyone's hearts. They couldn't afford to damage it. Of course, gathering over 300 soul formation experts to guard this transmission array was indeed making a big fuss over a minor issue. In fact, as long as they stayed quiet in the mortal world, no one in the mortal world would be more ridiculous than them. To put it bluntly, everyone was waiting here in anticipation of Yu Qianqiu's return. They didn't want everyone to go to the immortal world and leave them behind. That was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. How many years had it been since someone had ascended to the immortal world? No one wanted to miss it. In the end, Yu Qianqiu didn't fool everyone. He kept his promise and came back. When he appeared in the transmission array he made up, people around him immediately exclaimed, "The torture envoy is back." Those who were leaning against the wall, squatting on the ground, or simply sitting on the ground all stood up. Pairs of eyes that had been waiting for a long time turned to look at him. Immediately, a wave of exclamations sounded. It's true that the torture envoy is back. Torture envoy, you're finally back. Yu Qianqiu almost jumped in fright when he appeared. A large group of people were squeezed in the passageway. It was a dense black mass. No matter how he looked at it, they looked like a group of refugees. Yu Qianqiu looked at them seriously and said, "What's going on? Why are you all hiding in this dark place? Did something happen in the mortal world?" Nongzhu flashed out of the crowd and looked him up and down. She said, "You really have been in the immortal world. When you speak, you don't even use the word cultivation world, but mortal world." As he spoke, he turned around and asked the crowd, "Brothers, this level is a little different from ours." The crowd immediately burst into laughter, with a hint of expectation in their laughter. Yu Qianqiu looked at them and thought, well, nothing must have happened. I worried for nothing. Then he waved to the crowd and said, "Everyone be quiet. I have good news for you. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.